Well, good morning and welcome to City Hall. We're going to get started with the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Dr. Dan Maxwell is the pastor at Chisholm Creek Baptist Church. He's going to lead us in the invocation. This morning I was reminded that Dr. Maxwell has now started 4 churches in the Oklahoma City area. He grows them to 250 or 300 people and then moves on to the next project, and he's on his 4th project. Tells me there's not a 5th one coming, but I'm sure there's going to be someone who's going to try to urge him to take on another project when this one's done. Pastor Maxwell, thank you for coming down, and when he's completed his invocation, I'll ask Councilman Greiner to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. But would everyone please stand?
Dear Lord, we thank you for your mercy, for your grace. Thank you, Father, for these men and women who've come to give their lives and their interest to this city. I thank you, Father, for each one of these councilmen and women and for our mayor. Lord, I'm asking for wisdom for them. Your word is very clear. If anyone lacks wisdom, he can ask you, and you'll give it to them and hold nothing back. Lord, I pray that you'd give them courage to make decisions for their individual wards, but also help them also to see the bigger picture and to do what you would want. Lord, again, I pray your blessings on them and also the people that have come with issues. And Lord, we just lay it all at your feet, and we thank you. In Jesus' precious name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me in the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, as all of our citizens know, we are very proud of our police department, and this morning we are acknowledging one more reason that we are so proud. I'm going to ask the members of our police department that are here to come forward. The names on my list are Chief Bill City, Deputy Chief Ken McDonald, Captain Ryan Mosier, Captain Dan Stewart, Lieutenant Heather Durham, Lieutenant Clint Teal, Sergeant Michael Leary, Sergeant Aaron Ullman, Officer Jordan Crump. And Randy Scott is here. Randy is a former member of our police department, but now works for an organization whose an acronym is CALEA. They're out of Virginia, and they accredit police departments who are willing to undergo some very specific accreditation projects, but also willing to put their procedures on the line. So I'm going to hand the microphone so he can tell more about our police department and what this program is about.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, citizens. CALEA was formed in 1979 to be a best practices for law enforcement after they found that they needed best practices for law enforcement agencies in this country. And with that said, after that point, they started accrediting agencies voluntarily that applied to be nationally or internationally accredited. Since that time, Oklahoma City Police Department has been through 4 of these strenuous accreditations where assessors will come to Oklahoma City, review all the practices, their files, that nature, and it's an excellent procedure for them to go through. So I would like to, at that point, present an award to Oklahoma City for their 4th reaccreditation from CALEA for the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement.
Let's show our appreciation. We're proud of each and every one of you. Congratulations, Chief. Thank you, guys. Appreciate your work. Thank you. Thank you for what you do. Appreciate you. Thank you. Also this morning, we're going to draw some attention to our senior centers. And we have several people here that represent different senior centers from around the area. So why don't you guys come forward? Let's see. We have Crystal Handrahan, Bill Boudreau, Betty Robinson, Jackie Holman, Thelma Russell, and Hong Shaw Peters. We have a proclamation. I'll ask the clerk to read it, and we'll get settled and learn more about it.
Whereas older Americans are significant members of our society who invest their wisdom and experience to enrich the lives of younger generations. Whereas every day some 11,400 senior centers across America serve more than 1 million older adults, offering an engaging array of opportunities to help them live more fulfilling lives. The City of Oklahoma City operates the Woodson Park Senior Activity Center at 3401 South May Avenue and Will Rogers Senior Activity Center located at 3501 Pat Murphy Drive. Whereas through an array of services, programs, and activities, Oklahoma City senior centers empower older citizens to contribute to the health and well-being of themselves and others. Whereas Oklahoma City senior centers also serve as catalysts for mobilizing the creativity, energy, vitality, and commitment of older residents. Whereas Oklahoma City senior centers affirm the dignity, self-worth, and independence of older persons by facilitating their decisions and actions, tapping their experiences, skills, and knowledge, and enabling their continued contributions to the community. Whereas the National Council on Aging annually recognizes September as National Senior Center Month and has established Find Balance at Your Center as this year's theme. Now therefore, Mick Cordette, the Mayor of the City of Oklahoma City, does hereby proclaim the month of September 2016 as Senior Center Month in Oklahoma City, and he calls upon citizens and public officials to recognize the special contributions of Senior Center participants and the efforts of staff and volunteers who work every day to enhance the well-being of older citizens in our community.
Let's show our appreciation to our staff and the members of our seniors in the community who get out and improve our city. And Crystal, I know there may be no more difficult job than to try and coordinate seniors. Oh, you're shaking your head no. It's super easy. Okay, well, I'm going to hand you the microphone because I think people at home would like to know more about the different activities that our senior centers offer. And I know classes are growing, but we'd love to get more and more people out and involved.
At our center and at Woodson Center, we have yoga classes, we have dance classes, there's card games, dominoes. We're having a hula class coming up in the fall. Our fall programming is getting ready to start in September. At Will Rogers Senior Center, we're getting ready to have a variety show September 16th and 17th. Bill actually is going to be performing, so that will be exciting. So come out and see us. We would love to have you.
All right. And Bill, you'll be performing. What's your act?
I play the guitar, sing old ballads and love songs, some French songs too.
Wow. Okay, so September 16th and 17th.
$7 a ticket.
Bill's passing the hat. All right. That's at Will Rogers Senior Center. But of course, we have other senior center locations, and they're all on our internet website, and occasionally from time to time we get out that information in other places. But these classes are growing. It's a wonderful way to stay active and inspired, and we love our senior citizens and want them to continue to check out the facilities that we make available to them. So let's show our appreciation one more time.
Thank you very much.
Good luck. All right, good luck. All right, we're on item 3 of the council agenda, and it's appointments to the Residential Building Code Commission. Is there a motion? All right, cast your votes on 3A. It passes unanimously. Item 4 is the Journal of Council Proceedings. 4A is to receive the journal for August 16th, and 4B is to approve the journal for August 2nd. Is there a motion? All right, comments or questions on the journal? Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. And item 5 is request for uncontested continuances.
Mayor, a few this morning. On page 21, under item 9E1C, 1840 Southwest 15th Street, west of that be stricken. The owner is removed. Moving to item 9F1, still on page 21. Item A, 3317 South Avenue. We ask that that be stricken. The owner secured. Item B, 1100 Denmark Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner secured. Item J, 2768 Northwest 18th Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner secured. And item O, 515 Southeast 35th Street. We ask that that be stricken. There's a new owner. Then moving to item 9G1 on page 22. A, 3317 South Avenue. We ask that that be stricken. The owner secured. Item B, 1100 Denmark Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner secured. Item I, 3768 Northwest 18th Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner is secured. And finally, item N, 515 Southeast 35th Street. We ask that that be stricken. There's a new owner.
Are there any other requests for uncontested continuances? All right, item 6 is revocable permits. Our first is, a request from Alzheimer's Disease and Related Disorders Association to hold the Walk to End Alzheimer's. And this event would be scheduled September 24th. Is there anyone here representing this organization? Come on up. Is this Leslie and Herb? Okay, we will need your name and address for the record, please.
No problem. Thank you, City Council. Thank you, Mayor. My name is Leslie Ilston, and I'm with the Alzheimer's Association at 2123 North Classen Boulevard, so right up the street here, not too far away. This is Herb Magley, and he's the chair of the 2016 Walk to End Alzheimer's, and he's joining me for moral support today.
All right, and tell me about the event.
Sure. The event is on September 24th. We will start at the Bricktown Ballpark, and we have a new course this year. You guys keep doing all this construction, so we have to keep changing it. So we're actually going to go up and over to Lincoln Boulevard and by OMRF and the research campus, which will be great because we'll be able to promote some of the research that we're doing to help find a cure for Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is the 6th leading cause of death in the United States. It's the only one in the top 10 that doesn't have a cure, it doesn't have a way to prevent, and it has no treatment. Sorry. So the Walk to End Alzheimer's here in Oklahoma City is really proud. Out of 600 walks across the country, we were ranked number 22 last year. And it just goes to show you all how much Oklahomans and Oklahoma City residents really care about this disease, and we care about each other. We anticipate another record-breaking attendance year this year with anywhere between 8,000 to 10,000 people in attendance. So we are growing by leaps and bounds ourselves, so is the city. And so we just expect it to be a great day. We're going to have a lot of entertainers, clowns, Disney princesses, Captain America, Ghostbusters. I encourage all of you to come. You don't have to wear a costume. But it'll just be a really great day to raise awareness and funds for the Alzheimer's Association.
And how can people sign up?
People can sign up at okcwalk.com. Really easy, really short. I know there's also the Red Man going on that day, so if people want to go run and do all that kind of stuff, they can go to the Red Man, but if you just want to walk an easy 2 miles, come and join us.
All right. Well, I was reminded of Alzheimer's yesterday. Actor Gene Wilder actually died of Alzheimer's yesterday, so it's on our minds this morning. Thank you for drawing attention to it, and we're still working on a cure. Good luck on the run, or the walk. This is September 24th, and it's in Ward 7. John, you want to make the motion? All right. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Thanks and good luck. All right. Item 6B is a request for a permit with the Mesta Park Neighborhood Association to hold the Mesta Festa, and that'll be September 20th on Northwest 18th Street. And looks like we have a participant coming forward.
Hi there, Jill Delosier, 604 Northwest 18th Street. This is the 21st year for Mesta Festa. It's a fundraiser for the Mesta Park Neighborhood Association, and it is free and open to the public. Lots of live music happening that day and kids' activities. There's also a beer garden, and I just wanted to comment how helpful the city events staff has been in the Parks Department, and we appreciate your help and support.
Well, thank you, Jill.
It's a wonderful festival.
And this is in Ward 6, Meg.
Yeah, I'd move approval.
All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Jill, before you get away, how can people sign up to be a part of your event?
Mestapark.org has all the information, and you can buy wristbands to get into the beer garden on the day of the event.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, item 6C is a request with Rebuilding Together to hold the Rebuilding Together Construction Derby. It would be October 16th over on Chartel and Walker. And Jack Kaufman is here. Jack? Oh, it's not Jack. Jack's the one that signed up. You're the spokesperson.
I'm Rick Johnson.
Okay, Rick, thanks.
I'm Thank you, Council. I'm Rick Johnson. I reside at 3505 Cheyenne Villa Circle. I have the privilege of being a board member on Rebuilding Together, and just want to tell you a little bit about our organization. We provide senior homeowners, low-income senior homeowners with home repairs, anything from grab bars to ramps to major fixes of leaking roofs, plumbing, kitchen repairs. This allows our seniors to age in place at home rather than in a nursing home. The Construction Derby is one of our major fundraising events of the year. It's like a soapbox derby for older folks. It's a lot of fun. This is our 13th annual event, and we hold the event on 5th Street on the hill. We roll down the hill on 5th Street. So, any questions?
Yeah, it sounds fun. And remind me, how many years have you been doing it?
This is our 13th.
13th.
For this event, yes.
Okay. It's in Ward 6, Meg?
It is really a fun event. People take this seriously and build incredible vehicles. And that 5th Street is a steep hill. You really get up some speed in addition to some of the best cheeseburgers I've ever had. So it's a great day. Move approval, please.
All right, we have a motion and a second. We're voting on item 6C. Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Item 6D is a request from the Western Avenue Association to hold the West Fest. That'll be September 3rd on between 41st and 43rd Street, and Rachel Taylor has signed up to speak. Rachel, come on up. Tell us about West Fest.
My name is Rachel Taylor. My address is 510 West Hill Street. West Fest is now in its second year, so we had it last year, and we're now holding our second annual event. It is a street and music festival. This year we've added a second stage, so we actually have 2 outdoor stages that bookend the event. And we're running, the event goes from 12 p.m. to 10 p.m., and we have 18 musical acts on these outdoor stages throughout the day, and they're all local except for our headliner who's from Austin, Texas. And we have, we've basically taken about 8 months to plan this, and we have 20 local influencers that are on our committee that have made sure that this event goes off without a hitch in its second year. Food trucks will be rotating in shifts throughout the day, and our beer vendor will be serving Low Point specialty beer for us. The family area includes like a grass parking lot. We have soccer billiards from the Energy, and then we also have a kiddie car wash and a couple of other fun things for the kids. And we have a dog park that we've set up through Bob Moore Subaru. And we're just kind of excited because Western Avenue has recently undergone a streetscape with wider sidewalks and kind of a safer passageway for our pedestrians. So we're excited to show that off to the community and hopefully bring a lot more business to the small area that experienced a lot of kind of downturn with the construction. So,
all right, that's in Ward 2. Is there a motion on behalf of Ed? All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. And Rachel, before you go, how can people sign up?
You can go to our website. It's westfestok.com, and we do have a VIP area that you can sign up for. And then we also have it's a free event though, so we just encourage everybody to come out and listen to music and hang out.
All right. Well, thanks and good luck.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, we'll recess the council meeting, convene as the Oklahoma City Municipal Facilities Authority. We have 4 items on the MFA. Is there a motion? All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. We'll adjourn the OCMFA, convene as the Oklahoma City Public Property Authority. 4 items here as well. All right, cast your votes on the PPA. Passes unanimously.
Mayor, I do want to point out there has been a report that we put a $10 million scoreboard in down at the arena. It was a nice score, or at the ballpark. It was a nice scoreboard, but it was only $2 million.
All right, we'll adjourn the OCPPA, convene as the Oklahoma City Environmental Assistance Trust. 3 items under the EAT. Is there a motion there? All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. We'll adjourn the OCEAT and reconvene the council meeting with the consent docket. All right, are there any individual considerations?
Your Honor, 7AI.
And Mayor, I'd like to mention 7N.
All right. Well, Mark, go ahead and get started with item AI.
Yes, I want to
A1.
recognize this is a joint resolution with the Oklahoma City Economic Development Trust. It's an incentive program with a company by the name of HealthSmart Holdings, which is located in Ward 8. I'm happy to announce that they are creating approximately 150 new quality jobs. The average first-year wage for these new jobs is estimated to be $50,000. HeartSmart is a company located out of Irving, Texas. They employ approximately 1,400 people, and they are a national administrator of health plans for self-funded employers. I'd also like to thank the Greater Oklahoma City Chamber that's been working with HealthSmart since May of 2016 to persuade them and convince them to come here and expand. And I think the most important thing is the economic impact that these 150 jobs will have. The total estimated economic impact of this project is roughly $39 million, with additional sales taxes over the first 3 years of $164,000 plus. So I would like to thank this company for coming to Oklahoma City, and more specifically, thank them for coming to Ward 8.
All right. Thank you, Mark. Meg?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to mention this is actually a Ward 7 project. It's just about on our border, but this is the contract with artist Marsh Scott to place public art with our 1% for art fee in the transit hub. It's a fantastic piece, and we're really excited about it. And so I just wanted to mention that, bring that to everybody's attention.
All right. Any other comments or questions on the consent docket?
Mayor, we do have a presentation this morning on item AQ. That's the final plans and specification for the modern streetcar. And Doug Smith is here this morning with Jacobs.
Morning, Doug.
Morning, Mayor. Morning, City Council. This is the item on your agenda is the bid documents for the main line construction. Just to give you a brief update on some of the streetcar components, the vehicles are in production up in Pennsylvania. The maintenance facility has been awarded and the site has been cleared, so we're getting ready to build a building out there. The rail has been pre-purchased and it's probably on a ship as we speak, coming into the Port of Houston, we think, on Saturday, and then on its way by truck up to Oklahoma City. So probably sometime late next week, the first load of straight rail will be arriving at one of our staging areas. We pre-qualified our mainline contractors, and so that's ready to go, so we know who the eligible bidders for this package is that we're talking about. So what I want to do is walk you through the package so you know what's in our final design, and so we're excited about it. So we'll go through that. So the mainline bid package authorization. A couple of photos here to show you what the construction will involve. It's the track slab will be in the streets. We have almost 5 miles of street construction to do that involves this kind of thing. And one thing I want to point out, especially in Project 180 streets, is we did our best to avoid reworking the streets. So we tried to match grades in the roads so that the rails match in with the streets. So minimizing construction in those new streets and really everywhere as much as possible. And then on the right, you see the overhead wire. That is also part of the contract installation. And I'll tell you a little bit more about how we use the battery capabilities of our vehicle and where we're going to end up putting the on-wire sections. The civil engineering part of it, we'll do a final route review. I have a brief video presentation of the route, so I want to walk you through that. Give you some details on the track slab and rail installations. Talk a little bit about utilities and electrical systems and the stop platforms and shelters. So let's switch over to this flyover video, and I'd like to go ahead and walk you through the alignment. And let's see if I can get this mouse to work. So maybe not. So Carrie's going to run it for me. So we started at the. Go ahead and stop it there, Carrie, if you would. So we're working our way up Hudson. We started at the maintenance facility down on 7th and Hudson. As you know, that there's a road project there, and then we also have the park project over there. And so as we come north, we're in the middle lane of Hudson. We are planning to put an overhead contact system there with span wires. The span wires will tie in with the street lights at the park. We've coordinated all those projects together. And then as we get up to the intersection of the new boulevard, which you see there on your screen, we come into revenue service. So everything south of there is when we're coming from the maintenance facility and driving up into revenue service. So let's go ahead and go north on Hudson. We're now in the right lane of the road and coming up past the Myriad Gardens, and we come to stop 6. Now, this is an important place on the route because this is where the driver has to make a decision about whether they're going to go north into Midtown or whether they're going to turn right and do the Bricktown Loop. We're planning to run 4 trains normally in the Midtown Loop and 1 train normally on the Bricktown Loop. So at stop 5, they'll be able to pick up passengers from Myriad Gardens or from this area, and then the passengers can decide, depending on the marking on the train, which area they'd like to go to. We're going to continue north for this. We're going north on Hudson. And now we're at the library. We're rebuilding this plaza in front of the library. Right now it's a book drop, and so we're going to rebuild that area. It's going to be one combined plaza to the west side of the library. And of course, this will serve this area here at City Hall, city offices, et cetera. And also I want to point out that with one exception, all of our stops are what we call near side stops. That allows us to, when we have a situation where we're in a single lane and cars back up behind the streetcar, they won't be backed up into an intersection. And that's a real important distinction of our system. If you go up to Kansas City and look at their streetcar, they actually don't have that. They have far side stops. And so when traffic stacks up behind the streetcar, they can get trapped in that intersection. We've designed to avoid that situation with one exception, which I'll get to in a minute. So let's go north on Hudson, past the parking garages, and we're going to get up to the place on 4th Street where we make the turn. Now, this is where, all the alignment I described to you from the boulevard north, we are off wire. We're running on batteries at this point. This is where we go on wire, and so the driver of the vehicle will raise the pantograph, engage the overhead wire, and start charging the batteries. So this is stop 8. Also, kitty corner from this is the bus transit facility, and so this is where we can pick up passengers. People want to go back and forth from bus to streetcar, they'll be able to do it at this location. Turn right on 4th Street and head up the hill and get on down to the crossing with Robinson. Now, the stop number 9 there is a far side stop, and so we've done some special provisions with our train to wayside controls between, in our track slab, there's a sensor so that the traffic signal knows there's a streetcar there, and so it does some special clearing at that intersection to make sure that we don't end up with traffic stacked up behind the vehicle at stop number 9. So then we continue east, and we make the turn onto Broadway. One thing I want to point out here, I mentioned the bike facilities. This is a planned bike corridor through this area, and so we've made some provisions to take the bike traffic through here along 4th Street so that it doesn't interfere with the tracks. We don't have any situations where we have a bike sharrow or a bike lane that's in the same lane as the streetcar rails. That's a hazardous situation for the bikers. So, for example, at stop 9, we have the bike route coming around behind the platform so that the bikes can circulate through there. We turn north on Broadway, and one thing I want to point out about that turn is all of our left turns, we turn from right lane to right lane. So we have a special transit-only phase designed into those intersections where we get the vertical or horizontal white bar that you see in other transit systems. And that tells the driver that it's clear they're the only thing that's going to be moving through the intersection. And you see that on all those right turns. So now as we go north on Broadway, stop 10 and we continue on north, we're adding a new traffic signal at 8th. We get stop number 11. And one thing about Broadway, and this is an item that we've discussed with the Automobile Alley Association, is we're changing that parking from the angle parking. Everything will be parallel parking now on Broadway, and that's a safety issue for the streetcar coming by and the parking spaces. Continuing north on Broadway, we get up to 11th and stop number 12. This is also a new signal going in at this intersection, and again, the sweeping left turn from right lane to right lane onto 11th Street. Now we're going to go west on 11th, and we are straightening out that intersection right there. So, and also adding a new signal right there. So those areas I just described are the areas where we're adding new traffic signals specifically for the streetcar project. We continue on west on 11th Street, get to the stop number 13, and we're eventually going to get over to Dewey. And this is a special part of the project, stop number 14, because this is where we have our transit-only lane. And this is very important from an operational standpoint. So our route is scheduled to require 35 minutes to make the loop, which also ties in with having 10-minute headways. So that's our expected level of service for each stop on the Midtown Loop. The remainder, so we need 40 minutes for 4 trains to complete the circuit. And we have 5 extra minutes. So this is where the streetcar will spend those extra 5 minutes to make up schedule if the driver needs a break. We've already discussed with the hospital accommodations for them to share their facilities with our streetcar drivers. And so it's a very important place on the route to, we can put 2 or 3 trains in this transit-only lane and be able to store them there to stay on schedule. So we continue on Dewey, we turn back, and coming back east on 10th Street through the traffic circle, a couple of stops here. A few changes in the parallel parking, not much different here. Stop number 16, we pulled it back a little bit from the intersection to accommodate some of the parking lot driveways there, but pretty much where we wanted it to be. And then we turn onto Robinson, and as we head south on Robinson, we get down to stop number 17 outside the law school there, and this is where we now drop the pantograph and we go back off wire. And we're really happy, and I'll show you a little bit more of the on-off wire map here in a minute, but we're really pleased that we were able to work out our battery model so that we were able to do this. So this makes it completely off wire in front of the memorial gate. There's no visual clutter in front of their gate there at all, and so that worked out great. So we're now wireless, and we go south on Robinson. Again, there's the memorial gate, stop number 18. This is an important, if you want to make a transfer and you don't want to go through Midtown, let's say you get on the train over at 4th Street from the bus, and you want to just go south, well, then you can ride over here and transfer and catch a southbound train and just walk from stop 9 to stop 18. So these are paired strategically at this location. So we continue south on Robinson. Now, in the area of Robinson and Park, we did our best to preserve parking here. We are losing a few parking spaces, and those have been discussed with Public Works and so on. But anyway, we come through this tunnel area between the buildings, and then we swing into the left lane as we come past the Colcord and into that area and get ready to make the left turn onto Sheridan. So the thing that's significant here is this is where we join in with the route coming across from the Bricktown line. So there's quite a bit of control going on at this intersection. It requires, for the big sweeping left turn, requires some special traffic signal priority and controls there. So that's where the 2 trains will be intersecting and joining together. So we make the left turn onto Sheridan, continue west, and we get to the E.K. Gaylord intersection. Now, this is an important location in that we are installing a switch to be able to turn south in a turn-back scenario. It's not a normal operating scenario, but the rail is being installed as part of the E.K. Gaylord project, Public Works project. You see stop 23 right there. There will be a platform there, but there won't be any marker pylon or shelter facilities there, and it won't be an operating stop. So it's a future stop for future operation. But there will be a power-operated switch to where the driver can choose to make the right turn there onto E.K. Gaylord. And that's a good emergency operation provision in case there's something blocking the street or something wrong in Bricktown to where they can go ahead and turn back there. So important provision of the project. And then we go on to stop 21, and this is where we go back on wire for our Bricktown loop. Stop 21 is also one of the ties to the new transit hub. So if you get off of Amtrak or a bus or a future light rail, at the transit hub, this is one of the stops that will allow you to get on the streetcar and move around that way. Continuing east, we're at stop 22. This is one of the areas that would serve the ballpark. And then we're over to Joe Carter. And we have another transit-only lane at Joe Carter. We're down to stop 1. It isn't a place where we're planning to be able to dwell very long, the vehicle, not like we are on Dewey, but it is a good place to be able to stop out of traffic and so on. So, so that'll serve the ballpark and so on. Also, I'm going to go through the traction power substation locations on another slide, but anyway, we continue south on Joe Carter, and now we're in Reno, heading west. Another stop there serving the ballpark. And then we get down to stop 3, and similar to the stop number 21, this is where we change the pantograph, so we're going to go back off wires, we go into downtown and go under that bridge, and also potentially pick up transit customers. So let's go on under. There's a similar intersection with E.K. Gaylord on this side where we have a switch, and the traffic can come in from, the trains can come in from E.K. Gaylord. We come to stop number 4, which serves Cox Center, Chesapeake Arena. And now we're getting to the newer part of our alignment where we turn south on Robinson, and about halfway down out of the vicinity of 2nd Street, we actually go off-road. It's kind of hard to see with the aerial here, but we're going to go off-road and go into a transit-only lane. We'll be taking that right turn into stop number 5, and stop 5 is definitely one of our most important stops, and it will serve the new park, the new convention center, and be also a dual track, so where the Bricktown train can stop and charge up if it needs to, and the Midtown trains can go on in the, kind of in a passing lane. So anyway, dual track at stop 5. Then we continue, again, this is north of the boulevard, continue west, and join in with the route again in Hudson. We're back going north on Hudson, go back past the Myriad Gardens, and then get to the point again where we made that decision. This time the train is turning and going along Sheridan. Sheridan is one of the areas where we're running in the left lane. There is no stop in this area, and so this was to work out issues with the bike facility in this area, so we had no conflicts with the existing bike lane and so on. And so we are running in the left lane, and then as we continue east on Sheridan, we get back to the intersection with Robinson, and we make the transition over from that middle lane over into the right lane as we cross that intersection. So that's the brief alignment walk. And with that, I'll go back to the slides and give you a little more detail on the construction. The track slab is about 8 feet wide. It's about 1 foot thick. It's designed with reinforcement steel to be able to bridge over a 10-foot open trench under it. That allows the future utilities and public works projects to be able to work under the track slab without a lot of shutdowns in service. There's also an insulating boot around the rail. This is something that's real important in terms of protecting existing gas lines because there is a residual voltage on the rail, and this helps insulate from stray currents and things like that. As I mentioned, the girder rail will be arriving for this rail installation. The roadway grading, again, this is something that we paid a lot of attention to in design to match grades with the existing roads so that we minimize the amount of reconstruction that we have to do. This is just a typical section of our track slab and how it fits in. When they construct the track slab, first they'll open up the street. Kind of on the top left, you see the swath being opened up. They'll put utilities and some of our electrical conduits under the slab. Then we'll go ahead and set the rail like you see on the lower left and get the rail and reinforcement steel in place. Then the embedded rail is poured into place with concrete. Concrete's finished, and at that point we have our track slab is ready to go, and we move on to the next segment of construction. In terms of utilities, we have lots of utilities work to do in advance of that track slab construction. So we've relocated water lines out from underneath the track slab as much as possible, and That includes moving around to some meters and water services and valves. The sanitary sewers, where possible, we've gotten them out from under the track slab, but we couldn't at all locations because the street is already full of utilities. So where we could not do that, we checked the condition of the line, tried to make sure that it was in good enough condition where we didn't have to worry about it for some time, and we've had those discussions with water utilities. If we do have a sewer line that's remaining under the track slab, you can see a picture of a manhole there that's left splitting the rails, so that can be accessed for future maintenance under an operation where the streetcar would have to be shut down for a period of time or flagged. So we do have some of those where we've had to reconstruct manholes and adjust them a little bit between the rails. And then storm sewer, it's basic adjustments in inlets and manholes. This is the final on-off wire graphic, and as I said in the walkthrough, you can see where we're on wire. The Midtown section, you can see there we pick it up on 4th Street, come all the way around the top, and then go back off wire at 17, and then the red line there in Bricktown shows the section that we're on wire there. And that's real important from several standpoints, because our Bricktown loop, that's where we recharge predominantly, but we also will have to recharge at Stop 5 a little bit occasionally for the Bricktown loop to maintain a sustainable condition for our Bricktown route. The green area there is what we're considering to be a bid option. The overhead wires in Hudson are not essential to the project, but it would be valuable to have for testing and also potential future expansion into that south end of the system. I have a few slides showing the overhead contact system and the pole layouts, just to give you an idea visually of what things look like. This is what a typical corner looks like. We have a sort of a spider web of support wires holding that. And you can see on the top right the cantilever that comes across and holds the wire into position over it. So you'll see these in Midtown and Bricktown where we make our turns. And we made a brief slide kind of showing how the electricity works, which is kind of something that's some people don't understand, and it's kind of good to have a basic understanding of what happens. This is a feeder pole. We have a traction power substation. We convert from the voltage that OG&E provides, the high voltage, and we convert to 750 volts DC, which is what the trains run on. And then we feed it up a pole to the overhead wire, and so that's our hot wire that's running above the street. That wire is 18 to 19 feet high. So it's clear of trucks and other vehicles up at that height. And then it goes into the vehicle traction motors, and the circuit is completed by the rails. But by the time it gets to the rails, there isn't much of the voltage left. There's an average residual of 30 volts DC, which is safe for the public. And so there's not any concerns about anyone getting shocked on the rail. So we have that negative return that goes back to the traction power substation, and that's basically how the electric circuit works on these things. Here's another example of a typical corner with our overhead contact system. And here's an example where some of those wires have been combined with the street light poles. And I will also mention that we've done a lot of this with either traffic signals or the existing street lights. In fact, there's 100 locations or so within our alignment where we've done combined pole arrangements to avoid additional pole clutter. Now, if you go to a place like Portland, they have not done that, so you'll have a streetcar OCS pole and an old streetlight pole within 10 or 15 feet of each other, and so it really does clutter up the sidewalk and the street quite a bit. We've done everything we can to avoid that in Oklahoma City. Now, our Project 180 areas are already predominantly off-wire, so it's not really an issue there. But in the other towns, Bricktown and Midtown, we've done combined poles, and so our OCS poles for the streetcar in these 100 locations will have street lights on them as well. And we've done special provisions to run the electric circuits for those lights and so on. Here's an example where you have a span wire from side to side, and this is what it would look like on Hudson. That is a bit alternate, but because we're running in the very median lane of Hudson, we had to use span wires on that. Traction power substation typically looks like this, and so it does have the rectifiers and circuit breakers in it. And here's the locations, and these green rectangles are out of scale with what they really look like. They're roughly 20 feet wide and 30 feet long in terms of the space that they require. And there are 6 of them. Number 1 and number 5 are in Bricktown. We've located them as discreetly as we could, so they're along alleyways or off to the side of the road where They're not visually, they're not annoying, I guess I would say. We're not screening them. We've taken them through the DDRC, and they have agreed that the screening isn't required. So number 2, 3, and 4 are all in Midtown, and so you can see how they're kind of spaced out throughout the on-wire portions to provide an even voltage to the overhead wire. And so we feel like we've got them in pretty good locations. Number 6 is down at the maintenance facility, and it's for recharging the vehicles down there and also serving stop 5. Typical stop design, what you see in some of these areas where there's a parking lane, we extend the curb out to where the train will be. It is level boarding on our train, so we have the 14-inch high curb with the protective surface. The front and back ends of the stop have a lower curb, so it will double as a bus stop. And that's an important feature that Embark's counting on because they can stop their buses there, and they can also run a bus bridge, as they call it. If our streetcar is out of service, they can maintain service with buses. So that's an important feature. And also, the ticket vending machine location has been blocked out, and then the pylon is being developed by Embark. Now, they have some special plans for this pylon. We don't have those details to show you yet, but they're developing an information sign that's built within the pylon, and so they're coming up with those specifications, and we're going to include them at a later time. The stop shelter is, this is a kind of a rendering of what it would look like, and it is going to have a lit section in the center, so the stop is very easily identified, and then we're going to identify what the next stop is on the line. There's some leading rails and so on at the platform. And here's an example of stop 5. This is just a rendering. It's a little bit out of date because we put some wind walls in the center of that, and we straightened them out and put them between the 2 poles, but there is a canopy there in the current design, and it's got a glass top on it, and that's, again, just a good shelter. This is where we have the dual track coming in, as I mentioned, with the opportunity to pass, the trains to pass each other at this location. So, almost to the end here, I wanted to talk about our cost estimate. We're right at about $57 million, which is, puts us right on budget of where we wanted to be. Now, the cost estimate is a concern to us, and I know it's a concern to everyone on the council as well. We have recent bid openings from El Paso and Charlotte, their programs. We've looked at their prices on what they got on things. We've made some adjustments in our costs for that. But we also have to take into account our local prices on things like utilities and so on. So we feel like $57 million is where we're going to be. We're maintaining about a 10% contingency in that estimate for anything that we might have missed in our engineer's estimate. And we're also maintaining 4 bid alternates, which add up to this total of $2.3 million. So our idea is that those would be deductive alternates. They're included in that base bid estimate so that when we open bids, if we have a problem with budget, we can start looking at what we need to take away to make it work. Those 4 bid alternates are things, they're all things that we'd like to have in the project if we can afford it, but if we can't, then we can start taking them away. Another thing that's real important on this system, which other bids have not done in other cities, is they have not pre-qualified their bidders, and we have done that in this case. So we have 4 national contractors that are all highly experienced with doing this kind of work. So they should understand what these things cost and what their costs are in other parts of the country. And so that gives, those 3 factors give us confidence in the $57 million estimate. Schedule in general, we would be issuing bids tomorrow if the council votes affirmatively on this. We'd have a pre-bid meeting on September 15th, open bids in October, be back to City Council in early November for an award, and basically then in November we're kicking off our construction of the main line. And maybe most importantly, we're projecting November 2018 to have our work completed, tested, and ready to open for service. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Doug?
So Doug, this is a complex project. You know, you've probably got a lot of sheets of plans, a lot of details, probably 200, 300, 400 sheets of plans?
Over 1,000.
About a foot high?
It's about a foot high. That's kind of a funny anecdote. I think one of the subcommittee members asked to review the plan set, and so we wanted to give them full-size plans. So we took it to the print shop, and they were having trouble actually getting it downtown. It was like 120 pounds for the entire set of plans. So I'm sure we won't be printing many more of those.
Mayor?
Yes.
On the overhead wire, can you choose what color you want the wire to be? I mean, some of the lighter shades like silver or something like that may not be as noticeable compared to black wiring. Can you elect to have a different color of the wire?
I don't think that's possible, but I could check into it.
Ed?
Just as we stand now, what percent, I mean, where are we in terms of signal prioritization?
So we did look at that at final design in a lot of detail, and we added, in addition to these sweeping left turns, we added train to wayside controls at about 3 other intersections. I believe the number is around 12 where we have specific controls that we can tell if a streetcar is coming. We do something special to the signal to give it priority. So we've measured our route times and calculated the delay that we're going to have at that signal. And this is where we've come up with the 35 minutes for the Midtown and the 15 minutes for the Bricktown Loop. And we believe that we have enough infrastructure in place in this design to get started. Now, we're maintaining an allowance in our budget for another device called Opticom, which is, it has a GPS sensor on it, and we can tie it in with the signals to provide additional transit signal prioritization if we're having trouble with route times. And we'll be working with Public Works as we start testing to see if we're having any problems with the route times. We can easily add that equipment as we get closer to the opening time.
That would be an add-on that's not included as this is proposed today?
The Opticom devices are not included in this package. We're maintaining an allowance in the total budget for the streetcar project for that future equipment if it's needed.
Okay, and that would potentially interface with all traffic signals along the route, potentially, if you had that add-on.
I'm not sure it would be all, because we're concerned that if we do too much control, we start bottling, we start causing other traffic problems. So we have to be careful how we implement it and how much we implement it. I don't think it would end up at all 40-some signals that we have on the route, but we could do more than what we have now if we start having problems with route time.
It's a balancing act. We'll have so many that we'll identify that will be a priority. The cars will be equipped, and then we can add the equipment to the signals if we have issues. But again, it's a balancing act between keeping the vehicular flow going downtown, and at the same time we keep a reasonable route time on the modern streetcar.
Question about the construction of the cars in Pennsylvania. Are we running on time? Is everything going okay? So far, so good?
Yeah, we've been heavy in submittals with them, getting through all the final design elements. One of the things that we're concerned about was the design of the truck. We have a unique resilient mount on this vehicle, which is going to be great for operations long term, but they've completed that resilient mount design and the testing, so that was one of our schedule concerns. That's been taken care of. We're actually going to be in Brookville next week for the completion of the design and the authorization to start into the production, which means they'll start ordering doors and brakes and some of those long lead items. But we are anticipating that in the June of next year timeframe is when the first vehicle would arrive, and then about one a month after that. So we're still looking good for that.
Everything's on time.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from council? All right, Doug, thank you. Very comprehensive look at it. All right, any other comments or questions on the consent docket? We have a motion and a second, so cast your votes. It passes unanimously. All right, that puts us on to the concurrence docket. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions on the concurrence? All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Now we're on to item 9. These are items that require a separate vote. We'll start with a series of actions that take place in our alleys. The first is in Ward 6. Actually, the first 3 are in Ward 6. Meg, you okay with these 3?
Yeah, I think this is the Ward 6 zoning show today, but I've looked at all of these street closures, and I'm okay with them all, but I think we need individual votes. I'd move approval.
All right, so we're voting on these separately, and I'll take the first motion for 9A1. There was a second, so cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Motion on 9A2.
Move approval.
Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Motion on 9A3.
And move approval.
Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9B, there's a couple of items that come to us from the Traffic Commission, and again, they are in Ward 6. Meg?
Yeah, there are a couple of different subjects here, but this is to reestablish some reserved parking at the courthouse for government use. Move approval.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Did anyone show up today hoping to speak on any of the items under 9B? All right, we have a motion on 9B1. Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. 9B2?
Is a companion. Actually, these are establishing 90-degree parking on North McKinley and 16th Street, just east of the Plaza District. Move approval.
Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. 9B3.
B3 goes back to establishing the parking outside of this is Park Avenue, I'm sorry, on North Harvey, near the courthouse again. Move approval.
All right, cast your votes on 9B3. It passes unanimously. 9B4.
B4 is creating a disabled parking space on North McKinley, and move approval.
Okay, we're voting on 9B4. Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. 9B5.
And B5 is to create a disabled parking space on Northwest 1st and Classen. Move approval.
All right, cast your votes on 9B5, and it passes unanimously. 9C is a public hearing. This has to do with the rate adjustment for solid waste that was introduced at a previous council meeting. Did anyone show up today hoping to speak on item 9C? All right, how about a motion? All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9D is an ordinance that's being introduced today, and Bob Tiener and Cindy Richard are standing by to lead us through this idea.
The ordinance today that we're proposing is to incorporate the capital medical zoning ordinance into our zoning ordinance. It will help prosecution if we have a citation that we have to write in the capital medical zoning district. They'll be able to prosecute it. It's really, this ordinance adopts their ordinance by summary and then a reference, and so it won't be included in Chapter 59, but it will be there by reference.
All right. Any questions on item 9D? All right. We have a motion and a second, and I'll note that there'll be a public hearing on this item September 13th, and it's currently scheduled for final adoption on October 11th. Item just being introduced today. Cast your votes, and that item passes and moves along toward the process. All right, item 9E is a public hearing regarding dilapidated structures. Is there anyone here hoping to speak under any item listed under 9E? All right, how about a motion? All right, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item 9F is a public hearing regarding unsecured structures. Is there anyone here hoping to speak under any item listed under 9F? All right, how about a motion? Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9G is a public hearing regarding abandoned buildings. Is there anyone here hoping to speak under any item listed under 9G? All right, how about a motion here? All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item H is a public hearing regarding the removal of properties from the abandoned buildings list. Is anyone here hoping to speak under any item listed under 9H? All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9I is a resolution that would establish a safety policy for the city of Oklahoma City. And Craig Freeman and Nikki Kelly.
Yes, thank you. So this basically adopts the city policy for the city on safety. Safety is very important to us for our employees, and it'll formalize the city's commitment to safety. It also recognizes current practices that are already in place and then sets some goals for us going forward in having a safety culture within our organization. And having the council stamp of approval on this and support for this really helps to make a clear statement that this is something very important and critical to the city organization. Nick Kelly is our acting risk manager, and he's going to just take us through just kind of a high-level overview of what we have included in the safety policy.
Thanks, Craig. Good morning. The first thing I'd like to point out as we talk about our safety policy today, if you look at the lower right-hand corner, our logo for safety, our motto that PIO has helped us to work on, start safe, work safe, finish safe. That's how we read it, start the day safe, work safe, finish safe. And that's the, again, sort of this logo that we've worked on for safety. We talk a little bit about why we even talk about safety, and three major reasons that we talk about safety. The first, obviously, is that safety affects the lives of our employees, the quality of their lives, the quality of lives of their family and friends. It's very important to be safe, but other reasons that we talk about safety, safety affects the ability of the city to provide services to citizens. If we're not safe, we're shorthanded, we're not able to provide the same level of services that we could normally provide as a city. And finally, of course, being safe saves the city money. It preserves the limited financial resources that the city has. So it's kind of fundamental, but that's why our safety program is important. What does the safety policy do? As Craig had mentioned, it basically is a recommitment of the city to safety, to providing and maintaining that workplace that's free from recognized hazard. It's trying to safeguard all of our employees by following the best operating practices. Again, a safe workplace, eliminating or minimizing risk. We realize there's a lot of risks we can't eliminate, but hopefully we're able to minimize some of those risks. And we're able to, in the safety policy, to establish roles, talk about what departments should do, what employees need to do, what risk management needs to do to help to ensure that the city is safe, to comply with safety rules and procedures, and again, to have a workplace where employees can come to work and they go home in the same shape that they came to work. They're maybe a little tired, but they're still safe and they've done their job. Our safety vision, again, as we talk about a safety culture for the city, every employee is safety focused, understands the importance of safety in the workplace, that it's a way of work. Safety isn't something we think about afterwards or we think about before work. It's a way that we work. Every employee gets appropriate job-specific safety training, whether that's in a lot of our departments, again, do very well in that. Some of us need more work than others in certain areas, but everybody knows what their job is about and how to do it in a safe manner. And finding a safer way to work is also widely recognized and encouraged. And when we talk about recognizing a safe way to work, we're really not talking about, for example, rewarding people for not getting injured. We're talking about finding safer ways to work, eliminating hazards in the workplace, finding innovative ways to reduce risk. Those are the kind of things in a citywide safety recognition program that we want, people who figure out ways to work safely and more efficiently. And how we achieve this vision, again, as Craig had mentioned, this is one of the first steps today, is to have the mayor and council support for this safety policy. One of the major things that it will do is to establish a safety advisory committee citywide that's charged with improving safety. I would mention that this is not intended to replace any of the current union management safety committees that exist, and there are several in the city, but this is a umbrella committee, if you will, citywide. Also includes some of our trust members whom we cover for workers' compensation and insurance, like the Embark folks and the Zoo folks. So it is a citywide committee. Departments will establish a formal safety program and have safety goals that are specific to their operations. And then the city will consistently try to use the best safety practices in terms of communicating safety, safety recognition, training, accident investigations, even return to work programs. We realize that many of our departments have different resources and are in different places with safety. For some departments, our risk management central staff will work with them, whether it's needs regarding chemical storage, animal handling, lifting techniques, any of those kind of things. But again, we want everybody to understand what their roles are and how we can do the best we can in all of these safety areas. Again, talk a little bit more about the advisory committee. This committee is going to serve again as an advisory body to the city, to risk management and the finance department in terms of safety policy, fostering collaboration among departments. We have some pockets of real excellence in safety throughout the city that kind of had existed in isolation, and we want people to be able to share that information, to work together, to share their best safety practices. The committee every month, we actually have been meeting informally for a year now, and they review the accident and injury data that we provide them every month, develop safety recommendations, and again, share that information. So one of the real keys to this safety policy is the formation of this umbrella citywide committee that will look at the information and help to make these safety recommendations. On the last slide, a couple of things, again, that the Public Information Office has worked with us on. The first tagline, if you will, as we look at it, nobody gets hurt today. We believe that's a realistic motto, if you will, for city employees. We understand that if we say nobody gets hurt in a city that has over 5,000 employees in total, including part-time people and working some of the hazardous jobs, not only public safety but streets and parks, somebody's going to get hurt at some point, unfortunately. But nobody gets hurt today. That's something that today you can do in an individual department and try to get through. Nobody gets hurt today. And that's one of the taglines we've developed in this safety campaign, as well as talking about the other one is using a spotter. Again, we got lots of large equipment that's kind of difficult to maneuver if you don't have somebody helping you. So those are a couple of the things, again, we've worked on in cooperation with the Public Information Office. I'd just like to acknowledge we've had a lot of cooperation. I hope I don't forget anybody, but it's police, fire, parks, public works, development services, general services, airports, zoo, COTPA, and municipal courts. Personnel department has been with us all the way on this safety committee. And so they've really wouldn't have been able to do that without them to keep this thing going and to get before you today and ask for your approval for this safety policy. Thank you. Thank you.
Item 9J is a resolution that would determine employee holidays, dates for Christmas.
Christmas and Christmas Eve fall on the weekend. And so in establishing the dates, we asked our labor force, our unions, what they would prefer to use for those dates. And they provided input to us, so we are establishing those dates reflective of their input.
Okay. And is it, which dates are they? Is it?
Yeah.
Monday and Tuesday.
Monday and Tuesday. Okay. Is there a motion?
Move the item.
All right, cast your votes. Passed unanimously. And this is for 2017, not 2016. Okay, got it. All right, item 9K. I understand we do not need executive session on this item?
That's correct.
All right, is there a
Move the
motion?
item.
Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9L. I understand we do not need executive session?
That's correct.
Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9M. I understand we do need executive session?
That's correct.
Okay, motion to move item 9M into executive session.
So moved.
Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9N, I understand we do need executive session.
Yes, sir.
Move the item.
Okay, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item 9O is claims recommended for denial. Is there anyone here hoping to speak under any item listed under 9O? All right, how about a motion then to deny the claims?
So moved.
Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 10A is claims recommended for approval. Is there anyone here hoping to speak under any item listed under 10A? All right, how about a motion?
Move the item.
Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 11 is items from council, and our first is a resolution that would appoint Ed Hasbrook as municipal judge. And Pete, you've been leading the Judiciary Committee. You want to make a comment here?
Yes. Well, we used the last round of interviews that we had done in the past before Ed came in very close to be the selection the last time. Very well qualified. Judge, the current judge that's retiring or resigning is his term will end in the 1st of January, so Ed will come in effective that. We've consulted with the municipal council and the judges, the chief judges specifically. They feel they can adequately handle the situation between now and the end of the year, and then Judge Hasbrook will come on board. He's currently the advisor to the police department, has a lot of experience in the judicial system, and a very good lawyer and a really good guy. I think he'll do a good job of projecting the kind of image we want from the bench. You know, a lot of times the only contact people have with government is when they're in traffic court, and so a municipal judge has a lot to do about what people's attitudes are about the city, and I think he's a person that's very well equipped to do a good job, and so I would move the resolution.
All right, cast your votes. And it passes unanimously, and I'll note that Judge Hasbrook is here today. Judge, would you stand so we can get a good look at you? Let's show our appreciation to Judge Hasbrook for taking on this responsibility.
Mayor, we'll bring him back on January 3rd to be sworn in front of this council.
Sounds great. Look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you.
All right, item 11B is a resolution that would provide some essential information on a state question that is coming forward, and we have a couple of people that have signed up. And Pete, I think the idea of providing this information was actually yours. Do you want to say anything before we invite the people to speak?
Well, actually, I have to give credit to the municipal council's office for the way this is done. I asked for that resolution to be submitted, but municipal council believes, and I reluctantly tend to agree with him, that the city should not take a position, but it should stay in a position of advocating. It's a little difficult for me as a lawyer and as a city councilman to agree with that, but he gets paid a lot more to give his opinion than I do, so I'll go along with that. Before we get started, I think there are a number of people that have signed up to speak about it, and it might be well that we let the speakers talk first. Okay. I think the resolution, although longer than I intended, does a good job of setting out why citizens, especially citizens that live in municipalities, ought to be concerned about the potential impacts of 777. It's been previously approved by the city of Choctaw, by the village, by Edmond in slightly different forms than this, and it's been considered by other cities all across the state. I think Tulsa may have considered it, but a number of cities. OML is opposed to this, and I think there are a number of people here to speak on a slightly different topic, but somewhat related, and that is the land application of sludge. One of the things that 777 would do, in my opinion, it would limit our ability to do anything about that. So if any of you that have signed up to speak about sludge would like to add your opinion on the 777, as long as you just stay on that, because we're going to hear the sludge part later, and Water's going to talk about that. But I think it is related, very much related. So if any of you that have signed up on the sludge question want to weigh in after the signed up speakers have, feel free to do that.
All right, Johnson Bridgewater. We'll ask our citizens to keep their comments to 3 minutes or less. Johnson, we'll need your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Council. Johnson Bridgewater, 2400 Northwest 30th in Oklahoma City. I'd like to share a few thoughts on your resolution about State Question 777. I think it is a good start to ask residents to become educated on 777. I actually believe it would be better to go further and ask the citizens to vote no altogether. 777, first of all, disrespects the rights of voters by overriding elected officials such as city councilors and legislators. 777 would tie the hands of cities and the legislature. It It would actually put their power to regulate agriculture in the hands of lawyers, judges, the courts, and give a greater power to corporations over the rights of the individual. It's also vital to note that this state question was actually brought to Oklahoma by an out-of-state interest group, an organization known as ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, that has been passing this around to states since 1996. Well documented that they represent corporate interests over the rights of individuals and at the expense of citizens and individual voters. I also urge citizens to read all of the research conducted by the Kirkpatrick Foundation. This resolution is asking as an educational resolution. That would be the place that I would ask people to start. If 777 passes, it will set a very, very bad precedent that could be passed on to other industries. At this point, agriculture accounts for approximately 2% of the state's GDP. I don't think an industry that accounts for 2% of the GDP should be given special constitutional privileges. Many organizations have already taken a no stance. Some of them were mentioned. City of Edmond said to vote no. Oklahoma Municipal League, Association of Central Oklahoma Governments, Oklahomans for Food, Family, and Farm, Conservation Coalition of Oklahoma, Oklahoma Trout Unlimited, Oklahoma Humane Society, and an organization I work for, the Oklahoma chapter of Sierra Club. While I am the director of the Oklahoma chapter of Sierra Club, representing 3,300 voters in Oklahoma, more importantly, I'm the father of a fifth-generation Oklahoman. I really don't think that it is fair to have her voting rights disenfranchised before she even gets her first chance to vote on issues related to agriculture. Make no mistake, State Question 777 does limit individual rights. It especially limits the rights of individual landowners. In closing, I would also like to point out something that could be an unintended consequence. Last year, SB 809 was passed in our legislature. This took away the rights of cities and towns to regulate oil and gas. Well, since then, it's been very clearly noted that oil and gas, through wastewater injection specifically, is causing our earthquake crisis, and cities and towns have lost their ability to regulate wastewater injection. We cannot determine what could happen in the future, what issues may come up in agriculture that we don't have a crystal ball to look at in advance. So I would urge you, while it's a good start, to really think about State Question 777, and if it is something you may not want to take that next step and issue a vote no request. All right. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Johnson. Drew Edmondson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Good morning.
I'm Drew Edmondson, 10731 East Apple Valley Road in Oklahoma City. I'm pleased to be here. I want to commend Councilman White for proposing the resolution and the mayor and the council for considering it. Because 777 is not a feel-good resolution. It's not like naming the state salamander. We passed one of those in 2008 declaring the constitutional right to hunt and fish in Oklahoma. It passed with over 80% of the vote. But that measure said you have a constitutional right to hunt and fish subject to reasonable regulation by the legislature and the Department of Wildlife. 777 says you have a constitutional right to ranch and farm and use new techniques and new procedures subject to no legislation absent a compelling state interest. Now, compelling state interest is a term of art in the law. It is the highest burden that can be placed on a piece of legislation. It is tantamount to beyond a reasonable doubt in criminal law. It's the kind of burden that we put on any legislation that interferes with your right to vote, your right to go to the church of your choice, your freedom of speech, your freedom of press. These are fundamental human rights. With all due respect, agriculture, farming, and ranching is an industry. It's a business. It's a business like other businesses in Oklahoma, and no other business in Oklahoma. Not ranching, not banking, not oil and gas, not dentistry, not the profession of law. No other industry has that kind of protection under our Constitution. The dangers that are mentioned in the resolution that's being proposed are very real. That's why these organizations, including, and Johnson left out the Conference of Churches, All of these organizations have said, beware of 777. But it's a very difficult task. We need your voice in this effort, because if you ask 100 people on the street, are you in favor of the right to farm and ranch, 99 hands will go up. And the one that doesn't go up didn't hear the question. This is very serious, and it is an education process, and I wish and hope that the council will take the additional step at the end of that language and say, and we recommend you vote no on 777. It affects your ability to zone. It affects your ability to regulate animal operations inside the city limits. It affects your ability to have priority on water resources in competing with an industry that now has or would have a constitutional protection. And protection of water is tantamount. You all just completed, I hope you've completed, a historic agreement with the Choctaws and Chickasaws having to do with your water needs in the future. The Choctaws and Chickasaws have signed off, as with the other three, what we refer to as the 5 civilized tribes, the Cherokees, the Creeks, and the Seminoles, opposing 777. And we hope you join them in that effort as well. This is a bad measure. It needs to be defeated. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Drew. Can I ask you one question? Mr. Edmondson, can I ask you one question? I think you've largely answered it, but in the paper today, there is a preview to this resolution. There's a statement by Tom Buchanan, who's head of the Oklahoma Farm Bureau, and he just says, you know, these cities like Edmond and Choctaw and maybe Oklahoma City that are passing this, or this is misguided fear. We're not farming in downtown Oklahoma City, and therefore it's misguided. How would you respond? I think you largely have, talking about the water.
Two quick responses. There may not be large farm operations in the city limits of Oklahoma City, but there could certainly be puppy mills. There could certainly be exotic animals being bred. They are livestock. And your ability to control that will be eliminated by State Question 777. Mr. Buchanan, in the article this morning, also said there's no problem because water is a compelling state interest. The legislature passed a bill this year that said water is a compelling state interest. Unfortunately, the only statutes that are grandfathered in had to have been passed before December 31st, 2014. So if this bill that says water is a compelling state interest butts heads with 777, that measure is unconstitutional and provides no protection at all to your water. And that's a very serious interest for the city of Oklahoma City.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
All right. Thank you, Drew.
Thank you.
Anyone else here today would like to speak on this issue?
I might add something to what Drew said about farms in Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City is 620 square miles. There are farms, large farms, very large, hundreds of acre-sized farms inside the city limits of Oklahoma City. So I'm sure John has several of those, and I have lots of them. You know, so to say you don't raise cattle downtown, I think, Tom, that's a nice catchphrase for the press, but that misses the point completely, I think.
I also, Pete, if I could, I think it's also really important to point out that even if there is legislation that was passed before 14, it could be overturned by the legislature and then would be prohibited by 777 as well. So everything including, up to and including raising the animals for cockfighting and all of those sort of things that the voters already have approved could be overturned and then would be protected by this constitutional amendment. So I think it's extremely frightening.
Are there other speakers that want to speak on this topic?
No one is signed up to speak.
Your Honor, Pete, can I ask a question?
Sure. Our municipal councilor has indicated that he believes, and it's his opinion to us, that we're not able to take a position to vote no on that. Is that correct? I mean, to say don't vote for this?
That's what I wanted to hear about.
Yes.
When was this opinion issued?
Have you seen the research that he did?
There was no directly, no, I didn't send it to everyone, but there were no cases in Oklahoma, but the Attorney General's office has issued 2 opinions that say basically the majority legal view is that the expenditure of public funds cannot be used to advocate a particular result in an election. And the reason for that, the rationale is the fact that you're advocating against some segments of taxpayers in your own city on a particular result in an election. So there's no specific authority that says we can do campaigning on elections.
But the point is, the Oklahoma Supreme Court has never spoken to this issue.
Right.
And so other states that have looked at this issue, do we have opinions from those Supreme Courts that allow local governing bodies to take a position?
No, I researched this a number of years ago, and there aren't. The vast majority opinion on this is that you can't.
But Kenny, could you the expenditure of public funds, I mean, I could see if you were sending out mailers, but for us, there's no additional funds for us expressing an opinion.
Just the resources of having the staff do it and using the city resources.
Okay. What about, because ACOG has already voted on this. The city of Oklahoma City is already the largest member of ACOG. The resolution from ACOG says, at the end, therefore be it resolved that the ACOG Board of Directors oppose State Question 777 as a threat to ACOG members' ability to meet the needs and requirements of its residents and provide for their health, safety, and welfare. So the city of Oklahoma City has already voted for that and made that public statement as part of ACOG.
Well, I'm just telling you what the AG's opinions say. If you want to amend the resolution to say vote no, you certainly can. It's just you could have taxpayers come in who are for that and say, well, you misspent my public funds by advocating against this particular measure. And if you can campaign on this particular measure, you can campaign on any particular measure that's before the voters.
Which would put us, but my fear is that you have other cities doing it, Edmond, Choctaw.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's your call. If you want to amend it to say vote no, you certainly can. I mean, that was just what I'm just telling you what the AG's opinions say and what the majority of cases say.
And Kenny, that's directly related to the council as a body. Individually,
right. The city,
one can express their personal opinion.
Yes, absolutely. You can express your personal opinion on it.
I was going to ask, is there anybody here personally that, any of us that's in favor of 777? Any person on the council? I mean, you know, obviously don't have to say, but it seems to me would be interesting to know that if there are people that are opposed to it on the council, they'd speak up and say they're opposed to what we're doing today.
I would say I'm still undecided,
okay.
But but I would certainly in favor of our citizens looking into it more because that's what I'm doing.
Okay, Larry?
Yeah, there's got to be. What's the justification for voting yes? I've not heard anybody say that. And any story sounds good until someone comes and tells the other side and sets the record straight. Before I voted, I would like to hear why I should vote, why I should not vote to say no on this.
Okay. I don't know if there's anyone here today that's what I mean. Asking to do that.
Well, I mean, I think that's because their positions won't stand public scrutiny. I mean, they don't have the kind of position that you could stand here and advocate without it being ripped to shreds.
But Larry's today's resolution is to supply information on the issue to our citizens. It's not to urge them to vote one way or the other.
Well, I thought we were getting ready to take that next leap. Is what my comments.
I haven't heard a motion.
Supplying information,
to take that
I think,
leap.
is valuable because.
Yeah, I would suggest we follow the municipal councilor's opinion and follow his advice. But at the same time, as he said, each one of us can speak out individually on this item. I think our sentiment will be very clear by the time Election Day gets here.
Mayor, I would agree with your comments. Kenny's looked into this, and from a legal perspective, if he recommends we leave it as this, then I agree. And I'm opposed to it, but if our counselor has recommended this is the way we do it, I think we should do it that way.
All right.
Well, and we have until November if we want to change our minds.
Could we, I mean, does this mean that we couldn't take a resolution against 779? Just have to do the same thing, just recommend it's a bad idea? I mean, which cuts our throat even worse than this does.
Actually, if you can campaign against any measure, this measure on the ballot, you could campaign against any measure on the ballot. So you could hire advertising agencies and do advertising campaigns. I mean, that's the broader issue.
I don't think any of us think we ought to do that. I just think that what most of us think that a definite statement that this is a bad idea is not out of line.
Right.
I don't think any of us would advocate we spend city money buying TV ads. We can't even do it to promote our own issues, so I know we shouldn't be doing that to oppose other people's issues.
Well, we could continue to talk about this during council moments like we're doing now.
Well, I mean, I'd like to see us take a position against it, and the reason I would is because it's exactly what Drew said. It's exactly what he said. People, if you ask people, are you in favor of the right to farm? Oh yeah, we're in favor of the right to farm. I come from farm families. I know how they feel. They all think it's a good idea. You know, I suspect the oil business would love it.
My concern is if you make a motion for us to oppose it and it fails, then that is going to appear that
that'd
we're
be
in
the
favor
news.
of it.
Yeah, you're probably right. Well, I want no one from the land application sludge people have chosen to speak on this, but I will tell you this: if this passes, we're working hard to try to find a better way to get rid of sludge. If this happens, you can kiss that idea goodbye. It's over. All of you that think it's a bad thing to have chickens in Oklahoma City, which I'm not among those. I mean, I'm so in favor of chickens, I'm almost ready to vote yes on 777, but not quite. But I think chickens are here. I mean, I think this would stop you from regulating anything that has to do with agriculture. I think it's a terrible. I think it's an extension of what we've seen for the last 5 years come from the legislature. I mean, when we tried to regulate vehicles for hire, which we'd been doing for 50 years, they didn't like the way we did it, so they took away our right to do it. When we tried to do something about abandoned housing, the realtors loaded up the legislature with cash, and they didn't do it. We lost the right to do that. When we tried to do something about smoking, the smoking lobby did the same thing, and we couldn't do that. I think this is just one more example of just irresponsible acts coming out of the state legislature. And I'd like to say that defeating 777 is the answer. The answer is to defeat some of them in November. So if you want to get across the line, I'm ready to get across the line, because this is absolutely ridiculous. And what they've done to us over the last 5 years, if you just listed them, I just picked up 4 or 5 that I just came to memory very quickly. They're terrible. I mean, they are terrible. They run right at our ability to run a city, and most of us have been more involved in government for longer than they have.
Pete, I'll support a motion to criticize the legislature, especially if you
maybe I should make that motion.
Expand it to criticize their lack of transparency and openness in their decision making.
Right. I'm just pointing out that I think why I'm opposed to 777 and why I'm opposed to 779 and why I've been opposed to their taking away our right to regulate abandoned housing and vehicles for hire and smoking, and you can just go on and on and on and on, and all of them make no sense. The difference is the big money lobby groups know they don't want to have to lobby every city council. So if they can talk the legislature into taking cities' rights away, they don't have to come talk to us. You know, when we were doing smoking, how many of you were contacted by a lobbyist from the tobacco industry? None that I know of. And it's because they don't want to waste their time with us when they can go out there to people they've made huge contributions to and take away our right to do it. And this is just another example of that. I'm getting off the subject, but this is just another example I believe that local government ought to be able to regulate local activities. Oil and gas is another one. I left that out of my litany. But at this point, I think I'll just move the resolution and we'll go forward. I agree with you, Mayor. That's a good point. I think if there was a no vote against it or 2 no votes, that'd get more press than a unanimous vote in favor of the resolution. So I appreciate that. I move the resolution.
Second the motion.
All right. Cast your votes in favor of item 9B, and it passes unanimously. All right, we're still on items from council. James, you have anything for us today?
Tonight, we're having a meeting at the Heartland Bible College regarding the Oklahoma Safe Grant for the 4th year that it's been renewed. It's at 6 o'clock. I encourage everybody that lives within that basically the 10th Street corridor on the west side of the city to come out and hear a presentation from the Oklahoma City Police Department. And then we're going to have another meeting on Thursday, September 1st, up at the Surrey Hills Baptist Church. There's been 3 or 4 issues that have come up in that area recently, so we'll be discussing all of them. One is a housing development that the plat was just approved by the Planning Commission, so we'll probably talk about that. Some no parking signs were put at the Surrey Hills Elementary School that some people were upset about, so we will talk about that. And then there's been a couple wrecks lately on Highway 4, which is next to the development. That so we'll talk about some improvements that hopefully ODOT will be doing quickly, and then I'm sure city street conditions will come up as well. So I'm just going to be there and express my opinion on all those issues and answer any questions they may have. So encourage anybody that lives in the Surrey Hills area to come out. Surrey Hills Baptist Church, 6:30 on Thursday. Thanks.
All right, Ed?
I'm just still concerned about what we just did and the implications of it. And Kenny, I'd like that legal research. There is a concerted national effort. It's not unique to Oklahoma or Oklahoma City by ALEC and other organizations to use the weapon of preemption to take away local government's ability to govern themselves. And I'm afraid that we are getting handicapped by this decision. So I want to make 1,000% sure, because you are something of an outlier with other municipalities and ACOG feeling that they can make a statement. And I personally think there's a difference between us making a statement as a body and sending out flyers and doing robocalls and expending taxpayer funds on a campaign. I don't consider us passing a resolution a campaign. I think it's us as 9 individuals studying the issue, having concern for the citizens we love, and making a statement. Otherwise, I think we're handicapped in that fight, because this is not going to end. The preemption is not going to end. We've seen it, as Pete was pointing out, on smoking, fracking, on and on and on. It's not going to stop. And if we cannot say as a body, as ACOG has done, as Edmond has done, as Choctaw has done, and my concern is that Tulsa was watching what we did today, and other municipalities, Lawton is watching what we did today. And so I just want to make sure that we didn't give 777 a victory by us not going as far as what other municipalities. So I just want to say, as myself, to anyone who's listening, begging you, don't just vote against 777. Talk to your neighbors, campaign against it, fight against it, get it defeated, because we have worked so hard to give future generations things in terms of water, gifts that is now being threatened to be taken away by this measure. To make it constitutional, to make it forever, is such an extreme step, and it is a serious threat to our water supply and so many other things that were listed today. So just me as an individual, will work as hard as I can to see this defeated, and I hope that others do as well. Thanks.
Yeah, I think there's a big difference between taxpayer dollars going to campaign for or against something, as opposed to just letting our citizens see what the majority of us think. They're totally 2 different things. And so I hope we revisit this at our next council meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah, Larry?
Just to follow on what James said about the Safe Grants meeting at Heartland Bible College at 6 o'clock tonight. The neighbors in that area have been very diligent in their fight to improve the quality of life of the West 10 area. They have formed an organization. They're having their annual auction in September to raise funds to continue this. And this is just one way that the neighbors can show that they appreciate the support of the police department and the Attorney General for recognizing the gravity of the situation on West 10th and funneling extra resources into that area to try to attack violent crime. So I'd encourage the neighbors to come and listen. That's the only subject on the docket for tonight, to listen to the progress that's been made, the challenge that still exists, and to encourage all of us to join hands and to continue the fight to improve the quality of life on the West 10th Street area. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, Pete?
I think what I'm hearing from Mark and Ed is that they would support bringing the resolution back with a vote no. And I think if it's brought back with that, any of you that have, any council members that have reservations about doing it that way, I'd like to know it ahead of time. There's no sense finding that out on a Tuesday morning. But I think what my intention is to bring it back. The other thing is, I look at the clock and it's not quite 10:15, and we're doing it. We've been doing every other week council meetings now since the 1st of July. I think I propose to bring back another resolution to extend the period of time that we do every other week council meetings through March. I just think it's an idea that works. I don't believe that the public's hurt by it. I don't. If it is, I don't see how it is, and I think it's increases productivity. And I want to, again, if people have strong feelings, any of you have strong feelings about that, I'd rather hear them ahead of time to try to work them out. And I'm not saying I don't want the public debate on it. As David brought up transparency, I don't want to be non-transparent, but I just think it's a good idea, and I'll probably have it on 2 weeks from now. One other thing about this argument, I'm also the chairman of ACOG, and we didn't have the benefit of Kenny's opinion when we did it, when that. So, and there are people like the mayor of Jones who voted against 779. He's got blue and gold sausage there, and I think he feels that, and it's a much more farm community than Oklahoma City, and I think he felt like he was unable to take a position. I believe he abstained, and he's a person of conscience. I mean, he was trying to do the right thing, I think. The same thing's true about some of the people on there. Tom Buchanan is a good guy. I mean, he's not a bad guy. He shares some of the same concerns that I do, and he shares a trust in southwestern Oklahoma that was about a dam that was built to hold water for irrigation purposes. And he has a hard time getting the water out for irrigation purposes because the fishermen don't like it. Does that ring a bell to anybody in Oklahoma City about a dam and a fishing place? So we share some of those kind of concerns. And Paul Maggie on the other side is a lifelong family friend, and he's a family farmer, and he's opposed to it. So, I mean, there are good people on all sides of it. I just think it's a bad law. So, and I'd urge all of you to do exactly what Ed said. Tell your friends to vote against it, too.
All right. David?
I just wanted to say, Pete, I heard a little bit different. I heard that Ed asked for Kenny to provide us with research, and then we could make a decision as to whether or not to vote, take a more stronger stance. So I welcome Kenny's research, and then whatever that says, again, if he comes to a conclusion that says we ought to back off, I'm going to follow it. I mean, he's not doing it just to spite us. There's a reason. And he's an attorney, and he deals with municipal law.
Yeah. Let me just say something, though. Well, he's told us that we can go ahead and do it if we want to. The Supreme Court of Oklahoma has not ruled it and said you can't do it. He's just told the balance of all these competing opinions out there. In his opinion, the balance of those opinions say we shouldn't do it. But that's not to say that we can't do it. I mean, as long as there's no black letter law that says we can't do it.
I know.
Yeah, what Pete said is correct.
Yeah. No, I understand. I'll just wait for his research, and then we can bring the subject back. Because, again, we have until first week of November. So it's not like it's happening, soon. Thank you.
So, Mayor, I'm going to just jump in the fray and add my voice to opposition to both 777 and 779. I think we need to talk about that as well. I agree with Pete that that may be more damaging than anything to us. And I would just urge everybody watching and everybody listening to become informed and delve into what that means. Just like the right to farm sounds great, teacher raises, every single one of us would raise our hands in favor of teacher raises. But I think 779 is much more complex than that. And as municipalities are the only ones that rely entirely on sales tax, we need to be able to protect our penny to the best of our ability.
All right, John?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am also against 777 and also against 779. I would add more comments, but Pastor White has said it enough, so I won't repeat the different things that he said. But again, I do stand against 777 and 779. But also, I just want to thank. I see we have a nice group of Ward 7 people who are here to talk about the slush issue. So I'm going to limit my comments about the slush issue, but I stand with you in regards to the slush issue, and thank you all for coming out. And also, I want to say thank you to another Ward 7 resident, Drew Edmondson, for coming out and speaking out about what is happening, especially in the rural part of Ward 7. I am for agriculture. And I want to repeat that again. I am for agriculture. But it comes a point in time where agriculture is a business, and we need to make sure people are protected. So again, thank you to the Ward 7 residents who are here this morning to talk about the slush issue. And again, I stand with you in regards to that, and also thank you, Drew, for coming out. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mark?
I want to echo and agree with Meg and John's comments on 777 and 779. I am very happy that we are coming back to look at this issue again, but I want to finally say that Councilor Jordan is a fine municipal councilor, does outstanding work, and is always timely and well prepared when I meet with him, and I appreciate everything he does.
All right. City manager reports.
Today we have Chris Tatham with us, and Chris comes annually to provide the results of our citizen survey, and I think Craig and Doug are handing those out.
Thank you.
Mayor and members of the council, it's great to be back. This is actually, I think, the 12th or 13th time I've presented to you over the last many years. And just before the meeting, Doug and I were discussing the fact that on the first presentation, my youngest son was in kindergarten. Now he's a senior in high school. And one of the things I think about when a community does a survey every year, it really shows your commitment to getting input from the average resident, because most public meetings tend to be dominated by folks who want to change how you're doing things, don't like what you're doing, or people show up to get rewards and recognition. The average person's busy with their life. They just expect city services to be there, and you're probably not going to hear from the average person. So this tool really helps you get some input from folks in the community. I think most of you are familiar with our company, ETC Institute. I've actually managed over 2,000 surveys over the last 20 years, including surveys for 22 of the 35 largest U.S. cities. So a lot of times I'll be able to kind of put things in context about what's going on. There's been good years over the last decade that I've worked with you. There's also been periods of recession and difficulty, and that's actually what we're experiencing this year. Since February, 8 out of 10 of the cities where I presented have seen some decreases, and frankly, a lot of that's contributed to things related to the economy, the political spectrum, and I think you have a number of issues here locally that may be contributing to that as well. So as I go through the report this year, you're going to see some decreases, but what's nice is it's actually a mixed message, because there's a couple areas you've actually made significant improvement, even though people are generally feeling a little less satisfied with life and some other factors. So I'll highlight those as we go through, and here's just some of the communities. I think most of you are familiar with the list of the cities to which we compare you to. So as far as the purpose of the survey, most of you are familiar with, we do this each year. It's to give you an objective assessment of what the average resident thinks about the quality of city services, priorities, and their overall perceptions of where the city's headed, things like what's it like to live here, perceptions of safety, and other issues. And your city's really used it to help identify what your budget priorities are going to be. I know it's one of the main reasons that you do this each year. As far as the survey methodology, it's essentially the same methodology we've used for a number of years. Over the last couple of years, though, we've allowed people to complete it online as well, as more and more people are less likely to answer by phone. So we mail it to folks and give them both the option online and to do it by phone. And overall, the results aren't perfect, but we get results that are within about plus or minus 3% or less at the 95% level of confidence each year. And that just means if we did the survey 100 times, 95 times out of 100, you'd see the same results within about 3% or less. So it's very accurate. We also prepare some GIS maps just to let you see how people in different parts of the city rate different services and issues. These are the major conclusions this year. I want to start off with just the highlights. The city of Oklahoma City continues, compared to other large communities, to set the standard when it comes to customer service and the overall quality of city services. As I said up front, we've seen decreases nationally, and I think in some ways perhaps Oklahoma, because you're an energy center with oil, you may be seeing some of those issues affect your residents even more significantly than others, and we have seen a number of decreases in things like overall quality of life, place to live, and things like that, and that's probably impacting the economy, and other issues are probably impacting that. However, even though the overall trends are generally down, we saw significant improvements in areas of parks and recreation and code enforcement. That's actually a surprise to me, because typically when the overall results go down, everything tends to go down. So the fact that those improved shows you've really done some things in those areas that residents are noticing. Generally, you're doing a pretty good job throughout the city equitably providing services, but there are some differences and some gaps, and you'll be able to see some of that in the maps. And frankly, I've said this last year and the year before, streets continue to be the #1 concern and priority for residents, and it's even more so this year than we've seen in previous years. So those are the major findings. Just so you know how I kind of got there, first started off with just the general perception that residents have, which continues to be pretty positive. Although most of these areas saw decreases compared to last year, the overall numbers are still very strong. And you take a look at this, a place to live, you can see overall almost 8 out of 10 residents rate the city of Oklahoma as a good or excellent place to live, and all the way down to as a place to retire. You see there's very few people giving negative ratings, but most of those areas did decline from a year ago, which is probably a result of economic conditions, political situations, and other factors that are affecting things here. But I do want to highlight, before I go ahead, when it comes to the city that's moving in the right direction, for every person that doesn't like the direction you're going in, the 12%, don't forget that there's 70% that actually think you're moving in the right direction. So it's almost a 7-to-1 ratio as far as positives to negatives. As far as perceptions of the city, you can see overall quality of downtown all the way down to feeling of safety, generally rate high, but we do have 20 to 25% of the residents who are concerned about issues related to planning for growth, appearance, general perceptions of feeling and the safety. The overall rating was lower, but interestingly, when we asked people to rate their perceptions of safety in specific areas of the city, we actually saw some significant increases. And again, when I look at specific areas improving, but overall issues decreasing, usually the overall issues tend to be affected by broader macro level issues, whereas the fact that the smaller area, the more specific areas are getting better suggests you're really doing something in those areas causing the improvement. This chart, your public safety services, as you can see, continue to perform very well, but conditions of streets, 77% of residents said they were dissatisfied. And so that continues to be the #1 issue. I know the city is looking at that issue, and that's frankly the needs and expectations that residents have are rising faster than the city's been able to respond, which is one of the reasons we've seen the decrease in that area. But all in all, the city's overall ratings continue to fare very well. When you look at it overall, how you stack up to other communities, as a place to retire, the overall quality of city service is planning for growth. You're among the very best cities in our database in those 3 areas. You can see a trail are on par with a couple of the other areas, but for the most part, you really stack up well against other large cities with over 250,000 residents. In addition, when it comes to specific services, the customer service your employees provide is among the very best for the large cities that we work with. And again, I want to compliment the fact that you've got an employee culture that's responsive to residents' needs. That's unusual for large cities, which is one of the reasons you rank 15 points above the national average. On the other side of the house, you can see your streets are at 9%, and even though that tends to rate low for large cities, the average is at 32%. So that's genuine concern. What's impressive to me, though, is even though that's the #1 issue and it rates relatively low, it still hasn't caused people to lose confidence in the city, and your overall satisfaction rating and customer service ratings continue to be very high. And lastly, just wanted to show your utilities, because they're also among the very best. Your residential trash collection, bulky item, and water services, you can see, are all at 80% or better. And in most cases, you're setting the standard in several of the areas, particularly when your bulky item pickup, which is at 83%, which is almost 20 points above the national average. With that said, when we look at the overall satisfaction results for the city, you can see most of the city actually has about the same rating, but you can see the south central pocket actually rated a little bit lower this year. But for the most part, the city is doing a fairly equitable job providing most services, but you can actually see more detail in the individual maps and the reports if you're interested. As far as some of the major trends, these are some of the notable increases and decreases from a year ago. I'd like to highlight that your parks, code enforcement, and specific attributes for public safety were some of the areas we saw the most improvement. In fact, maintenance of city parks was up 11% compared to a year ago. Your walking and biking trails were up 7%. Cleanup of debris and private property was up 7%. I won't read the whole list to you, but all in all, you can see even perceptions of safety in downtown and city parks were both up 5% and 6%. So those things are moving in the right direction. Notable decreases, you'll see that as a place to raise children, a place to work, planning for growth. A lot of these are overall macro level issues, and I think that just really shows that the attitude right now of people in general is a little more negative to quality of life, perceptions of government, and a number of other things. And you can see those tend to be the leading issues that are causing the overall results to be somewhat lower.
Could I ask you a question about that? How much of that, go back to the last screen if you would. No, the one where that one. How much of that, of the dissatisfaction with the jobs and dissatisfaction is related to the fact that people don't have, we've got a lot of people, more people unemployed, and a lot of good jobs have left in the last.
Well, I know as we've done surveys for many years, I've been doing them back from the early recession we had in 2000, 2001, did them again with the big one in 2008, and now I'm seeing a trend here in the last few months.
Right.
And every time we go into a recession, overall survey results go down when it comes to perceptions of quality of life, the place to live. So that's not unusual. And if this city, which has a lot of energy, I guess oil-related jobs and things like that, that probably is having an effect, but I can't tell you that with absolute confidence.
How do this year's declines compare to the last oil and gas recession?
This year is actually, you had a big decline. You got through the last recession, interestingly, because the oil helped you out while everyone else was collapsing with the housing market. But I haven't done enough research to really be able to pinpoint. But that might be something we could do this year.
It would be interesting to know whether this oil bust, price bust, has affected us more or about the same or less than the previous ones did. We've had that happens in Oklahoma City. So.
As far as the top priorities are concerned, city streets have been at the top for several years, but now you can see it's even higher priority than it's been in the past. 8 out of 10 people picked it as one of their top 3 choices, and you can see more people picked it as a first choice than the top 3 combined for any other issues. You can see working your way down, traffic flow, police, and public transit kind of round out the top 4 issues. And one of the tools we've helped you use for years to just kind of get a sense for, well, if you invest or you emphasize certain areas, how is that likely to impact overall satisfaction? And you can see a condition of streets is at a 0.73 important satisfaction rating, which means that's really the issue. Even things like public transit and traffic flow are at the lower end of the very high priority, being just above 0.2, but clearly streets is one of the things that residents are hoping to see you address moving forward. And then for those of you, this is for those of you who are left brain learners, I always put this in. For those of you who are right brain, it's the same data, but it goes from left to right, shows the importance from the bottom to top, shows the relative satisfaction levels, and you can see condition of city streets is in the bottom right-hand corner, just emphasizing how significant that issue is to the community and the opportunities that improvements in that area could have on the overall ratings for the city in the future. So as far as within categories, condition of streets was the top issue overall. Within code enforcement, emphasizing the cleanup of junk and debris on private property, mowing and cutting of weeds, and exterior maintenance of residential property were the 3 issues that rose to the surface there. As I mentioned, maintenance is the number 1 issue, and within maintenance it was the condition of streets, both major and neighborhood streets. In parks and recreation, you can see walking and biking trails, the quality of parks and neighborhoods, city recreation centers, and maintenance of parks were all the things that kind of rose to the surface. But with all the items that are listed here, it's streets is up here, and the next high priorities are a distant second and third. And this just brings me back to the summary chart I had up front. Overall, city should be proud of the fact that it continues to set the standard, particularly in customer service and its overall ratings. But this year, perceptions of quality of life and just general attitudes toward the community and so forth are lower, and there's probably a number of factors contributing to that. But despite the lower ratings, the city's really done something right with code enforcement in parks and recreation and some specific attributes of public safety, particularly downtown and in your city parks. So you're to be commended for that. It shows you've been able to target some of your investments in things that were important to residents, and I think that's one of the reasons the city continues to get high ratings overall from residents. But moving forward, the street issue just continues to be at the top of the list each year. So I don't know if anyone has any questions, but that's sort of a high-level summary of what we found this year.
Your Honor. More of a comment. To me, the fact that the number 1 decrease was an area to raise a child, I think that may go towards the state's funding for education in general, because it impacted all school districts, and we've got to get that figured out. And so, you know, the other issues as far as, is this a safe place to live? Do you feel safe? Yes, we get high marks in that. And so that would lead me to think it has to be the education system that we're having to address right now for us to see such a big decline. The second point I'd like to make is on the roads, just as Councilman White always points out that we have an opportunity every November to voice our concern and make changes at the voting booth. That's going to carry over, it appears, to our municipal elections if we don't seriously begin addressing the conditions of our streets here in Oklahoma City. And I would just encourage that the council, even if we have to set aside a full meeting, begin looking at ways to seriously address that issue, or come, March of each several years to come, the citizens will be, voicing their opinion as to our action or lack of action as it relates to the streets in our city. So I would again encourage that the council look at serious attempts to turn that around, despite our challenges that we're having with our budgets due to reductions in sales tax revenue. We can't just continue to put that issue off. Thank you.
I would agree with David that I think we need to devote a full session talking about neighborhood infrastructure. When I ran for office, people would ask me, what do you think, what are the two most important issues or three that you think we need to be addressing? And at the time, we were in the middle of a drought, and you could walk across Lake Hefner almost. And water was my primary concern, and then roads next. I think we've solved our water problems with this agreement as to Sardis Lake. I think we've planned for the future. But right now, we need to do something quickly as far as these roads are concerned in the neighborhoods. I've heard people say before, if your neighborhoods aren't thriving, if your neighborhoods aren't happy, nobody's happy. And I think it's something we need to devote a full session to. Thank you.
I'm always interested that it seems like the satisfaction on the condition always seems to go down every single year. But every time Eric gets up here, the PCI, the Pavement Condition Index, improves every single year. And so it seems like it's almost a perception problem rather than an actual street problem. But I might be wrong. But that's kind of my perspective. I really like the PCI because it's much more objective.
So to that point, I think we need more guidance from you in future surveys. I wish you could drill down. You can't drill down on each and every one, but on the ones that we know year after year, city streets are going to be number one, transit. We had one that said quality of police service. Well, what should we do with that? I mean, what are they saying? They want more police, or they want interaction to be different, or what? Same with streets. They're saying condition of city streets, but that might be different to one person who thinks we need sidewalks, and another person who's concerned about potholes, and another person something else. So I wish that on just the top 2 or 3 that we know are showing up year after year after year, we could drill down with some kind of follow-up question. What are the first, second, and third priorities of streets? What exactly do you want us to do to improve the condition of city streets? And then I think that helps guide for the bond and everything else.
And maybe which areas that those people live in that are giving the really bad answers. I don't know if is that going to be in here?
Yeah, there's a couple of maps.
Is that in here? Okay, good.
Yeah, and a lot of the individual comments are in here. I mean, there's pages and pages of individual comments near the back. We really appreciate your work and look forward to continued work in this area. And, to the extent it doesn't give us a solution to the problems, as James points out, the perception is what we deal with. And so having the facts and having the perceptions, at our disposal is really helpful. Any other comments or questions on the survey? All right, thanks.
Mayor, just want to move on to the sales tax report. And we have the report for August, which was not good. August was down 6% below last year's collection. It was down about $1.13 million below last year. July wasn't bad. August was really quite bad. And so I think it's a little bit reflective of what Russell Evans talked about 2 weeks ago, is that I think there's a lot of unknowns, and I think the next month or two is going to give us some data points that will drive our decisions as we go in the future. I'm anxiously awaiting the September check, but I just don't know how optimistic we can be at this point in time.
Yeah, and interesting that when you look at the other cities, Tulsa, Norman, Edmond, Moore, Midwest City, Yukon, everybody was down for the August sales tax check. So usually there's one outlier. Somebody had a bump, or there's some sort of reporting error that gets corrected. But I mean that's a unanimous sign that there's something going on that's negatively impacting the revenue of all municipalities that we compete with and work with.
Yeah, I wonder if a number of the municipalities around Oklahoma City have used all kinds of sales tax rebate programs to encourage all the development they have. So in many cases, their sales tax revenues are inflated, in my view, based on the retail activity that was generated by the sales tax. But most of them, not most of them, some of them actually rebate the sales tax. So sometimes the figures, if you see some of the cities that have been involved in that, are higher than ours. If you would subtract the amount of money that they have to give back to the retailers, that they'd be in much worse shape than they are. I've looked at that. I don't have any idea, for instance, in Moore or Midwest City, both of which have done a lot of that, how that impacts them. But I would like to look at it from the standpoint of analyzing whether or not we should be more active in that. I'm not, personally, I don't think we should be, but I'd like to know if it works. I mean, if you just look at the raw number, it looks like it works. But if you had a way of looking at the net number, that is the number they got to keep, it might not be quite so attractive. And at some point, I'd like to be able to find out whether that system works or not.
It's really complicated because there's a term called churning, and that's that you've got new income growth in this area, but you're taking it away from other stores that are in Oklahoma City. And that's where you've really got we have a problem with it, that we don't want to give an incentive and mine sales tax revenues from other stores in Oklahoma City.
Right.
And so we're very careful when we go forward with that. A couple of the other metro areas, they're not doing that because they're generally taking the tax dollars from Oklahoma City.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's at the bottom line, though. We've got to. I don't want to do churning either. I understand that, but at the bottom line, since we live and die by the sales tax, it seems to me that net increase in sales tax is a very important number to know when you do that. And I just there are some tactics that have been used in the suburban areas which appear to work on the surface. I just don't know whether they work in reality or not.
Okay. Courts?
No, sir.
All right. Citizens to be heard. Joe Sarge Nelson. I'll ask the citizens as they come forward to give their name and address and to keep their comments to 3 minutes or less.
How you doing, Mr. Mayor?
Hey.
Joe Sarge Nelson. I've been here before. I gave y'all a rest for a while. I'm here today. An article in the Daily Oklahoman about the United States Supreme Court to start cracking down on public corruption. It interested me quite a bit because my case, I was up against experts. Mr. Kenneth Jordan's office there and Mr. Wiley. They hit 2 points on a case I brought before a member of your council. And the only reason I was up there that day at the court was to hear the certificate would be set for hearing, but it was a packed house. I mean, there were a lot of cases going on since Judge Deason passed away. But they claimed in here that the papers that I filed appeared to have no wrongdoing and that I had run out of the statute of limitations. Had I been a lawyer, I think those two items would not even have been addressed. It said nothing about the case in its detail at all. But for the record, I have come to the conclusion that since I have a website, I'm going to address the website with my information. It'll be on Facebook. And I will not show the actual evidence, but I'm going to address it. It'll be a lengthy thing, just like Mr. Jordan knows that my case was kind of lengthy, especially my brief was 58 pages long. I didn't present all of it, but I knew I was going to get shot down anyway. I didn't have the legal capacity, but on a technicality, got shot down. That's fine. I have to respect that. That's the way it went. And I compliment both Jordan and Mr. Wiley back there. They did an excellent job on bringing the case to court, handled it accordingly and properly. And but I'm not leaving it there. As I said, I will continue on with this case, but I am going to hire counsel, and I'll be speaking to him sometime today and do it the way it should have been done to begin with. I hope y'all have a nice, safe weekend, and a big one's coming up, and y'all have a nice day.
All right. Paula Yokel.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm going to adjust this just a little. My name is Paula Yockel. I am a resident of Northeast Oklahoma City at 10929 East Hefner Road. I have prepared my remarks. I'm going to read them because if you let me speak extemporaneously, you will never get me out of here. But we've got to talk about something, and I need a little latitude on the 3 minutes, but I'm going to keep it as tight as possible. We do appreciate the freedom of being able to address you. And we appreciate the work you do and the work that our city employees do that goes against our mission of providing a clean, safe, and affordable experience for those who want to live here. It's important. Those sound like a catchphrase, but when you live it, clean and safe matters. We need to address a couple matters. Mr. Mayor, because we are addressing a public health matter and a water contamination issue, I respectfully request some latitude on my 3 minutes, but I will be succinct. Got to keep my system up running here. I am a volunteer public servant serving my second term as a traffic and transportation commissioner for our city. But I approach you today as a mom. As a private citizen, with great concern over a practice that harms my family. Those are strong words, but I promise you I mean them, and I'm prepared to demonstrate how I mean them. It is the EPA regulated and endorsed practice of spreading municipal sewage sludge onto urban farmland, calling it Class B biosolids, a fancy word, and letting our urban farmers believe it is safe, organic, and a good idea. It is not safe. It is not accurate to call it organic, and it is not a good idea. I am not suggesting, hear me clearly, I am not suggesting our city or our state is implementing something that shouldn't be. We are following the federal rule. I'm checking it out. But I am saying this federal rule is not protecting us, and I'm going to demonstrate that. The bigger part of what I want to talk about is not the rule, but the effects of this practice on the people who live by it. Not only does it make my family sick, it makes our air unclean and unsafe. We have pulled an air study. We know the metals that we're breathing. The Department of Labor and the American Lung Association frowns strongly on the metals that we're breathing when you are downwind from sewage sludge. Not only does it make our air unsafe, it harms the agricultural farmland, and we would never recklessly, irresponsibly, carelessly broach this subject. But I have vetted with federal environmental researchers that we've got a groundwater problem. And I will demonstrate what we've done, and I'll give you my lab results. But we have a problem in Oklahoma City, and we're 30 years late to the game, but today's a new day. We can get on top of it. Since last November, these are just some of the health effects my family has experienced from living downwind in close proximity to land-applied sewage sludge. Fevers, headaches, vomiting with muscle cramping, conjunctivitis, pneumonia-like and flu-like viral conditions, MRSA, skin infections requiring IV antibiotics and hospitalizations, 7 ER visits, 2 hospitalizations, my husband and my son, GI hemorrhaging requiring hospital procedures, 2 potentially long-term lung diagnoses for myself, adenovirus. And I'm going to go on the record with this. I absolutely believe my son's diagnosis of Kawasaki disease, which he got simultaneously with adenovirus, can be proven out and will be proven out to be emitting off of these sludge fields.
Paula, can you get to the specific area
Yes.
you're talking about and kind of give us a way to wrap this up?
I just lost my document.
What part of the city are you located?
We're at Northeast Oklahoma City.
Uh-huh.
We are out in Ward 7. We live in agricultural farmland amongst beautiful acreages, etc. This practice happens everywhere. The farmers are told it's a good idea and it's safe. Here's what we know. Our doctors agree with us. We have a problem. We are submitting to you, Mr. Mayor, letters from our pediatrician and our pulmonologist, and I'm going to conclude the health effects with this. This is the final remarks on my pediatrician's letter that I am submitting not only to you but to public record.
Okay.
Given the recent problems with the water in Flint, Michigan, and the fact that it was a pediatrician who discovered the lead poisoning in her patients, I feel an increased responsibility to follow through with these concerns. It is documented. Next, we're curious. We believe in trust but verifying, and we asked for samples of this material because we knew we had a problem. We got permission. We had an ODEQ lab go out, collect samples. We've tested it. We've tested it for this: organic content, percent solids, nutrient, metals, organics, radionuclides, prominent bacteria. And we also are, I believe, if not the first family in the United States to be able to do a DNA study on this material. Does it travel off these fields into the air and into your homes? We present that to public record and to you today as well.
All right, Paul, I'm going to have to wrap you up. Are you on the city's water system? Are you on well water? Where do you get your water? What's your water source?
We're on well water.
Okay.
We talk to neighbors about their situation living downwind of this. Other people get sick. It's not just my family.
Let me turn to the municipal councilor. Kenny, what is our authority to deal on the types of water issues that she's discussing? And if it's not an issue for you, we could bring in somebody else. But
I don't know specifically what authority we have right now. In fact, I was just emailing someone to start researching that.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well,
Mr. Mayor, this is public health and water contamination. I have vetted our results with federal level environmental researchers.
I think you've made your case very well, and we look forward to the documents you're providing. But let us look in as a body as to what authorities we have to help you, and perhaps we can help you with other levels of government if that's where the case needs to be resolved. But I can't take up any more time in this meeting. Paula, thank you. David Yokel?
My name is David Yockel. I live at 10929 East Hefner Road. I'm Paula's husband. I'm going to continue with what Paula was speaking about in the interest of procedures. Thank you for your time. The test results that we have found include hexavalent chromium, mercury, silicon, molybdenum, barium, iron, copper, silver, titanium, aluminum, plus 10 more. Now, EPA 503 only looks for 9 metals. I just listed many more than 9. So the bottom line is we've got an issue. We did a gamma study about radiation material. 11 were detected, one of them with a half-life of 703.8 million years. We understand radioactivity is present everywhere, and you might call these low levels, but sludge is not land applied in small doses, rather by the hundreds of truckloads. And how much gamma radiation would you want your family breathing? Mr. Mayor, Dr. Petchia at Yale University gladly welcomes a phone call from you. His research is included in what we've submitted. If you want to know the harmful chemicals and toxicants and viable pathogens transport from sludge farmland to neighboring communities, read this. If you want to know the chances of infection from viruses that thrive in sludge, like human adenovirus, like our son contacted, read it. If you want to know what kills lung tissue most quickly, sludge or animal manure, it's in the packet that we've submitted to you. And if you're interested in knowing if it can actually be proven with DNA that sludge aerosols transport off of farmlands by air and into homes surrounding them, read the documents that we presented to you today. We want to talk about water for just a moment.
Okay.
The soil effects must be discussed on our behalf of the farmers in the futures. We didn't start out this examination of this process looking for water, but through contacts, it led us there. We've tested water from various well sites, and we found a direct correlation between sludge material and the stuff that's found in our water. Well sites that are 9 miles apart, not side by side, not across the street from one another, separated by a great distance, that are near sludge-applied laminate application locations that contain contaminants from sludge. It's a bad practice that we need to stop from the treatment of the sludge that's applied to these locations. I want to talk about pH a little bit. pH, I'm sorry. Okay. EPA 503 requires that a 12 pH be achieved in the sludge if you use a lime stabilization project, pathogen reduction. A 12 pH. Please keep that in mind. We land apply more than 80,000 wet tons per year. And do you know where it's put? All out in northeast Oklahoma City.
Okay, David, I'll just ask you to sum up your comment.
Sure. Again, we need your help to look at this practice. We have a bad law. You guys, we talked a lot about 777 earlier and the unknown consequences or the consequence of that. EPA 503 is a bad law. 30 years later, we are suffering the consequences of that 30-year practice of doing what the government told us was okay to do, and it's not. And ladies and gentlemen, we need your help to stop it as soon as possible.
All right. David, thanks. No, but there are other people here to speak on the similar issues.
Thank you for your time.
I'm sure we'll hear more. Jane Smith?
I apologize for my lack of knowledge. I don't understand. Where is the sludge coming from?
Sludge comes from the wastewater treatment facilities.
Okay.
And it's the biosolids, there's criteria that are used, and we do lime stabilization, so we add lime to the sludge, bring up to the pH to a high level to kill the pathogens, and then there's specific rules and regulations as how it can be applied and what can be used with the product that's generated off those fields.
Like in a year, how much do we put out there?
Oh, I don't.
Well, it's a lot. And so it's the agricultural uses of this product that are alleged to have infiltrated the drinking water, the water source that she's relying on.
Do we charge a fee for that, or it's just to help us get rid of it, or?
There's not a fee charge. We work with the farmers, and we save money for the disposal, and it brings value to their crop production.
So the things we add to it is lime to increase the pH, and what else?
Well, that generates a heat and it kills off the pathogens. There's some aeration to there's some sludge treatment as we go on down the line. But
are there chemicals that we add to it to?
I've been away from that for a long time.
I'm sure we can get the answers. Jane Smith? It doesn't work that way, Jane. I can't pick and choose who gets to speak, but if you'd like to speak, I'll be glad to give you time. All right. Robert Biershank?
Robert Biershank, 6,000 North Midwest Boulevard, Oklahoma City. I am a resident of Oklahoma City, as Paula is, and her husband. Last February and March, there was plant-applied sludge across the road from us. Probably somewhere between 400 and 600 semi-loads, I estimated. I didn't sit and count all of them, but I counted by the hour how many. And for just about a month, we put up with this. I called a health department. A senior health department inspector come out. His remarks were, nobody should have to put up with this. He asked me to not go outside without breathing apparatus. I've got to ask him, I don't want no more of this. I've talked to Mr. White. I want to commend him for being chosen a Calgary as director. And I've got an article here where clean air and water. We need the same. We need the same. We don't need our air polluted. Me and my wife fixed the fence right across from where sludge was applied a month before, last Monday, a week from yesterday. I've had problems with my breathing from the air blowing over that. What kind of city is this? What are y'all doing to us? I just asked we not be gassed anymore, please. And I'm concerned about our water. In fact, I'm involved with an agriculture group, and I won't say who, but that's going to be the topic of our discussion. We are so isolated. Our aquifer is one county wide, just a little bit over a county long, a little bit in Logan County, a little bit in Cliff County. I was on a 50-year water study. The reason I got on was because of water, because of our Garver. I've been interested in it for years. I've been concerned about the biosolids application. 18 or 19 years ago, I consulted the Bureau of Indian Affairs. They told me they don't allow it. They might be smarter than our other farmers are. I am a farmer. And I was interested to hear the topics that Mr. White had about 777. I won't comment on my opinions on them. I certainly respect yours, sir. I think there might be some grave concerns. And you were saying we can't help it. On the AE-17 flight zone deal, I asked my kids to come out and build next to us because Pete and I, we were the same age last February. I don't know, he may have passed me up, but if not, I'm going to catch back up with him. We had quite a discussion on that. We worked through it, did we not, sir? But, it required a survey sent out, 12 property owners within the perimeter. And if property owners, not multiple properties, but one each one, we have to notify them. Had to come before the board down here. We had to go out a mile around. Could we not have the same thing before we apply biosolids to neighbors' property? Couldn't we not have some process where the neighbors would be notified? No, they moved in at 4 o'clock in the morning and started applying the biosolids. Couldn't figure out what was going on. Sheriff's Department come up by the houses and drove down where my children's houses were being built. I got up and looked. My golly, somebody's out there on a private drive? Called the police department. They called back and said, well, the sheriff's department was looking for so-and-so address. Well, someone called because they saw these trucks going into this farm at 4 o'clock in the morning. That's kind of unheard of in our area. That can be pretty bad for someone. Mm-hmm. But we can't handle this no more. I beg and plead with you, please don't put it on. Please don't put it on in these neighborhoods anymore. And I understand where Paula's coming from. I know the areas around her place that's had the biosolids put on. And I can tell you, when you have to breathe this stuff, one of the farmers that uses this all the time told my neighbor shortly after this occurrence happened, he said, there's some sludge that we get that's not too bad, and there's some that's real bad. I can tell you we got a bunch of real bad of it. And I suspect it's because of the pH, the 12 pH. Good farming land, 7 pH. That's the ideal pH in a ground farm. A 12, where they dump the sludge, it won't even grow anything for a while. It's barren spots. It burns the ground up. The 25% solids is up on top. That liquid's going down into our groundwater. I think we have a serious problem. I don't think Paula has exaggerated not one single thing. I think she's right on the beat.
All right, Robert, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Lisa Butler.
Hello, I'm Lisa Butler. I live at 11600 North Westminster Road, which is roughly right at 122nd Westminster. My husband and I own Dub Ranch, which is a farm. We have almost 800 acres out there. Before we lived there, the previous owners, the Hopkins, put sludge on those fields. As soon as we took over, we put a stop to it. I have a field that's 7 years old that still will not grow anything because the previous owners put sludge on it. We put a stop to it. We don't use it. Just 2 blocks down from us, where they had applied sludge, the air, I mean, the smell is nothing. The smell's horrible, but that's nothing compared to going outside. I can't let my children outside to play because they get sick. I mean, asthma, pneumonia, doctor's appointments, ER visits. This is all happening, and it's happening to our children. It's happening to us. It's happening to my husband. You know, he can't even go outside and work when it's like that, when it's really bad, especially in the months after they've sludged. We can't even go outside to work. How are we supposed to work on our farm and in our sand pit and make a living and you know, pay sales taxes so you guys can have that penny if we can't be out there working because of everyone sludging around us?
Okay.
You know, I mean, they, like the people before me said, I mean, if you have to notify somebody within a mile around you of something going on building-wise, why can't you do that for sludging? And why can't we have the option to say, no, not around my house? I mean, almost 700 acres, almost 800 acres that is sitting there doing nothing because we can't go out and work it because of the air. It's not right, guys. You really need to look into it.
All right. Thanks for coming down. All right, any other citizens to be heard? Come on up. We will need your name and address for the record, though.
My name is Patricia Scott. I live at 12017 North Post Road, which is right across the street where sludge was actively applied last January. I live about a block away from where our previous speakers were, and Mr. Bierschenk owns the land behind me and farms it. I also saw a lot of negative benefits of the sludge. At first, I didn't realize that it was sludge. I'm new to Oklahoma. I grew up in Ohio, in farming country, but we just certainly didn't use it there. I know it's federally legal to, but for whatever reason, we were able to keep it out. When Paula alerted me to it, a lot of things came together for me. Specifically, the ER visits that myself and my husband had made. And actually, I barrel race, I have horses, and I spent a lot of time at Oak Ridge with conjunctivitis issues, which I have never had in a horse previously. Just being out all day, directly across the street from where the sludge was being spread, her eyes swelled shut. That's how noxious it is and how many heavy metals are released. I just would like to say very quickly, I'll be very succinct because they covered a lot of the science behind it, but the sludge that's being used is branded several ways, and I'm sure you're aware of that. There's Class A's, there's Class B's, but in both, there are high acceptable levels of E. coli. You may or may not be aware that field I'm speaking of specifically is directly on the North Canadian River, which I understand we're trying to make this a wonderful boating facility right downtown here. I can't imagine that there won't be some direct correlation with the water quality there and with what is being run off into that watershed so very directly with no filtering whatsoever. I mean, it's right up to the beach. there are not only E. coli, but heavy metals such as triclosan, and large produce companies like Dole specifically won't accept produce that is grown where sludge has been spread. I think that's very telling. I think that some of the research that, I'm not sure if it was included in what Paula submitted to you, and I'm afraid I'm not as prepared as she is, but that so many of the issues that have been seen recently with E. coli outbreaks has been linked to this practice. So I respectfully just wanted to add my 2 cents, and that I directly live across the street from it and have had issues myself.
All right. Thanks for coming down. We will look into these issues, and right now we have executive session.